Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me today, we have Josh Torres.
Holy hell, what a crazy week.
And we have Chow Min Woo.
You sure about that?
It's been a crazy week. So I'm back on the Tetracast. So obviously anyone who is a regular listener, I've been out the last couple of weeks just on a personal vacation. So obviously thanks to Josh and Chow here, as well as Adam and James. Was James here last week?
Yeah.
Okay. He's not here this week because obviously there's been a lot of events going on
James
this
was not
week.
here last week.
Actually, I'm kidding. Yeah, James wasn't here last week. That was
yes.
2 weeks ago. Yes.
Okay.
He wasn't
so
here.
yeah. So I wasn't here. James wasn't here. James is in Tokyo for TGS. Obviously, we have a lot of news coming out of TGS. We also had a State of Play. Level 5 finally had their Vision event that had been postponed from earlier in the year. We have a couple games releasing at the end of September. We have a lot of games slated for October. So, of course, it's a busy week. Adam is also out for a couple weeks for a personal family visit. So it'll be us three holding down the fort. Obviously, we've had a lot of people on staff covering the news out of TGS, none doing more heavy lifting than Josh here. So, Josh, thank you so much for upending your sleep schedule to follow all the publishers, all the streams, all the live events going on out of TGS, and synthesizing all that data and getting it up on the site and transferring it up to the rest of us.
Honestly, it's like not as bad as previous years, which is like good and bad, I guess. Like I've heard from like multiple people, acquaintances, friends, like whatever. That's like it's definitely it feels like it's more big business focused than like other TGS events, or like there's like smaller events for like more niche developers and publishers and stuff like that. So it's like good and bad in the sense that like the amount of news isn't like as crazy, but at the same time like it feels like there's just like less games to see this in a way.
And a lot of the framing of the news, there's we see this kind of at the summer events too. Different developers or publishers will try to preempt the deluge by kind of announcing a major headline early. Like for instance, we got just recently the release date for the Suikoden remaster, and then it again did show up at TGS, but since they had already shown the release date, what they focused on in the TGS stream was just comparing the original and the remaster for UI, for sound elements, things like that, which is still neat. It was just kind of part of a collection of other updates for games that had already been kind of detailed elsewhere. It's the usual thing that we see where the games will kind of show up and crop up in different presentation formats, and then it's our job to kind of synthesize it together and say, oh, here's what came out of TGS. So we're recording this during the last day of TGS over in Japan because we're recording this on Saturday.
I think it's 2 public days, right? So the first public day just ended, and I think the tonight, which is gonna be the second day of TGS, public day of TGS. I think that's the last day? Question mark. I think it's like 2 business days and 2 public days.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So like we're recording this on Saturday in the West, which is Sunday morning in Japan, and Sunday is the last TGS public day. So I think we've got all the major news out of there. Obviously, we'll wrap back up next week if there's anything that's lingering. But one of the games we're going to be talking about in our first section here is the release of late September. And that's, of course, the new Zelda title, Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. So I've been playing this, just not a review code, not responsible for that, but just purchasing it and playing it on my own. We do have a review up on the site from Alex Donaldson, so go ahead and give that a read. But I was just, I gave it a read just to kind of compare my experience with his, but I was just going to open up the podcast just talking about my time with that before we go into news. And we also do have one Japanese release. We'll talk a little bit about Kaino Kiseki, which recently released in Japan. Of course, this is the most recent release in the Trail series, following Kuro 1 and 2 or Daybreak 1 and 2. Obviously, with no announced plans for the West, we have Daybreak 2 coming out early 2025. We'll talk about that in a very brief session after we talk about Zelda. Of course, any discussion about Kai, we'll state it clearly up front. We will not be going into any story spoilers for that game. But I'll open up here with Zelda. I'm not completed with it yet, but I'm about 15 hours in. I believe there's roughly 8 dungeons, and I've finished 6 of them, so that's kind of where I'm at. I've explored the whole map, but I'm kind of finishing up heart pieces and side quests and things like that. And I actually don't think that any discussion here will take too long, mainly because of how this game is presented. Obviously, it's the first original. I hope I'm not forgetting anything here. It's the first original top-down Zelda game since A Link Between Worlds. I believe I have that right. Of course, we had the Link's Awakening remaster. When did that release? Time goes by so fast now.
I forgot in the remake. Yeah,
6 years ago, something like that.
been
Right before
quite a
the
long time
pandemic.
ago.
Yeah,
Well, that's why I say
and-
it's like the first game starting Princess Zelda, and then it's like since the CDI era or something like that.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not the first, but it's in few and far between.
Yeah. But random tangent. Did you know that there was like I forget the name of the game, but there's like an indie title that is deliberately trying to like make a spiritual successor to the CDI Zelda games. They got back like the original artists and voice actors to
Is
that
called like RZ or something? I forgot what it's
Yes,
called.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have we covered that? I don't remember. But yeah, there are
I don't
if you
think we
like those
covered that,
games,
but yeah, I've seen it. I think it already. I don't know if it released already, but it
oh yeah,
looks
RZ, the
awesome.
Jewel of Faramore. Oh, it did release earlier this year. But yeah,
Yeah.
anyways. But yeah, this is obviously the main thing here is that it's got the for talking again about Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. It's got that toy box art style that was debuted with the Link's Awakening remake, which I think is a very pretty art style. It's just unique and something different. And it is the first game in a while that stars Zelda. It's got the classic 2D Zelda dungeon overworld playground style, I guess, in progression style, in terms of not being the open world sandbox that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is. And the reason why I don't think it'll take a long time to discuss this game is because even though it does shake things up in terms of the echo mechanic, in terms of starring Zelda, in terms of the other kind of gameplay wrinkles that are in there, playing this game is very nostalgic in a good way. It feels like a game that I could have played 10 years ago, but I don't mean that with any disparaging. It's comfort food in that sense, where if you have played and liked any 2D Zelda game at all, or Oracle games, Minish Cap, any of them, you will like something here because it feels very return to form in that sense. It's not going to like upend the convention there. It feels very nostalgic and it almost feels like a game you've played before, even if you haven't. And I kind of appreciate that because, of course, with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, we hear to different extents, but primarily in agreement that those games have a lot to enjoy about them, but they are different in terms of dungeon design, in terms of progression, in terms of linearity, where this one does incorporate a few of those concepts into its DNA, Echoes of Wisdom, but it's more of a classic formula there. So if you've missed old school Zelda dungeons, Breath of the Wild really didn't have them at all. Tears of the Kingdom kind of went a step further, but it still really didn't compare by the time all was said and done. This one is a little bit more true to form. It does introduce a little bit more non-linearity to it, but more in the sense of you can do dungeons 2 and 3 in any order. You can do dungeons after the Zelda games almost always have a mid-game event where you become an adult in Ocarina of Time, or you access the Dark World and Link to the Past, or whatever. This game has a very similar cadence where you do some initial dungeons, then a story event happens, and then the world's your oyster, and you have a bunch of dungeons you can do at that time in any order. So it's a little bit more nonlinear in that sense, but it's not the sandbox that the two Switch console games are. One thing that I was hoping would be better in Echoes of Wisdom is that if you've played Link's Awakening Remake, this one still has this very similar level of performance. It doesn't run very well on the Switch. It'd be probably a very good game on Switch too, presuming there's backward compatibility and a performance boost on it. But it's if you played Link's Awakening Remake and you know how that performed, this game is very similar. It's just
That's
how
a
it is.
shame. Yeah, that's my fear. It's like, oh, okay, that was like the first thing I thought was like, okay, they're doing the Link's Awakening remake style. How's the performance? And it's about as expected, I guess.
Yeah, and it also has this like vignetting effect where the bottom and top of the screen is slightly blurred.
Yeah,
Which
it's like the first Octopath.
yeah, and it's one of those things
That's
where like I think that sort of artistry could look good. I mean, there's some people, and this is a valid opinion to have, that they don't want any blurring. They want any depth of field, any bokeh, all of that off.
That's me. I turn off motion blur and I turn off depth of field. Anytime there are options.
I almost always turn them off because my opinion is that if they're implemented well, you barely even notice. You should not notice. Where here, it
Yeah.
is very blatant. It's obvious. If anything's in the foreground, it's a blurry mess. I don't know why I'm just kind of rambling. I just wanted to talk about this game, and that's the I feel pretty positively about this game, and now here I am, like, by the way, it performs poorly. It has a lot of
those are the cons, you know.
uh,
You talk the good and the bad. When
Hey,
it
you're
comes
just
to
being honest, you know. Like sometimes you gotta mention these things, you know.
yeah. One talking about the game a little bit more critically, I suppose. One of the things that Alex brought up in his review, he did bring it up. He did think pretty favorably on it, but like the thesis of his written review is kind of like, yeah, this game stars Zelda. Yeah, this game has some different mechanics, but there really isn't a lot in this game's DNA that reminds you that you are Zelda. Like it just as easily could have been Link. And then the way the game progresses is obviously shown in a lot of the trailers is that you can access like the sword fighter form where normally Zelda cannot access a sword and a shield but has to use the echoes mechanic, which I actually really kind of enjoy because it just changes the pace of combat. Like in a normal 2D Zelda game, you're running across the field, you see two moblins, okay, if you have enough health, you just go and fight them. Where here, the pacing's a little bit different. You're like, okay, what echo do I want to use? You might just be more inclined to ignore them because fighting, there's a little bit more of a ramp up in terms of selecting an echo, spawning whatever you like, positioning yourself because Zelda can't jump very high, etc. It's just the pace is just different. But as you go throughout the game and you progress, you get items, you get different. Obviously, you get heart pieces. You extend your how often you can transition into the sword fighter form, and it almost feels like the stronger you get, the less you have to use the bespoke mechanics. The more you just toggle into sword fighter form and play the game more conventionally, which I'm kind of two
yeah.
minds about. It's kind of nice because it's like, okay, I don't need to ramp up and use echoes. I can just fight them. But then you're also kind of diluting, okay, then I'm just playing this game more traditionally. And I don't think I've sat on the game long enough to know on what side of that fence I fall. I'm just kind of noticing it where it's like the further I get in this game, the less I have to play this differently from any other Zelda game, which is fine because the Zelda games I enjoy, I've enjoyed a lot of them, but it just feels like it could have been done differently. That's kind of where I'm sitting at that right now. Again, like 3/4 of the way through it. Um, there's lots of mini games to do, like horse races. There's a mini game where you have to use the traversal skills to pick up. In the Link's Awakening remake, there's acorns. I believe they're acorns that you find scattered throughout the world to power yourself up. Oh wait, they're seashells. In this game, there's kind of a magic crystal that you use to power up your sword fighter form. And they're like under rocks or in shrubs or in caves or behind boulders and things like that. So that's kind of like your motivation to explore. And eventually, just like in Link's Awakening remake, you eventually get like a radar that can like detect where those are at. It's got that very conventional sort of collectathon aspect to it. There's not a traditional trading sequence as far as I can tell, which is kind of a bummer because I kind of always look forward to those. But there are a few like bespoke rewards where if you do the races at the Hyrule Ranch, it's not called Lon Lon Ranch, it's called Hyrule Ranch in this one. You'll get a music box, which eventually you can trade to Dompe, who in this game does the automaton. So you use that to build a specific automaton. So it's got your usual flair of side quests, things like that. Alex did talk in his review that this game does lift a lot of the UI elements from Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom in terms of your primary quest marker, what characters look like when they have a side quest to get you, your quest log UI. The UI for using your echoes is very similar to the UI for using the sword, shield, and bows from the console games. And I kind of actually like that, even though the game looks very different and plays very different, it does give it a little bit of connective tissue between the 2D and the console games. One thing that disappoints me a little bit is the side quests in this game, at least early on in the first like 10, 12 hours. A lot of it is very much, I want to see this echo. Can you show me this? Like, I want to see a keys that is on fire. And then if you've seen a fire keys, fire bat, you summon it and they're like, wow, thank you for showing me that. Here are 10 rupees or whatever. And the thing is that makes sense for like introductory side quests, but they don't really get any more interesting or rewarding than that until quite a bit later in the game. Like now, I'm just now like seeing that sort of stuff. So it's one of those things where I think a little bit more could have been done there, but it's, you know, they're distractions. If you don't want to do them, you don't have to. They're optional. The main quest is pretty like people don't play Zelda games. At least I don't play Zelda games for the main story. It's charming enough. It's interesting enough. Some of the characters are kind of fun. You get some Gorons that are named like General Silver and General Gold because they like eat rocks and minerals, things like that.
Yeah.
There's in Hyrule Castle, there's like a captain left and a minister right, and they play off each other pretty fun. But it's more character moments and things like that rather than arc or narrative. So like talking about this game, there's really not much to spoil. It's a lot of kind of the same flavor. Like, oh, there's a Goron city. Oh, there's a Zora city. They've already kind of shown that they do this fun interaction between the river and the lake Zoras, things like that. I will say that one of the dungeons does have a returning boss that I wasn't expecting to see, that I don't think has shown up since their original debut. So I won't say who that is, but that's pretty fun. Um, and then as for the dungeons themselves, I'm very glad to see a return to form in terms of having multiple levels, small keys. You get a dungeon map and there's optional rooms that you have to kind of think outside the box to get into, and usually those reward with like rupees or materials that you don't have to get to clear the dungeon, but they're extra. But I don't think I think they're kind of middle of the pack in terms of 2D Zelda dungeons. There's a lot of dungeons where you're never really expected to backtrack. You go into each room once, you do a small puzzle, and then you never have to go back. And I kind of like, in my opinion, the best Zelda dungeons, you should go to a room that has two locked doors and you have one key and have to decide which to unlock. So you are necessarily forced to like backtrack at some point. But a lot of the dungeons, at least within the first six, even like the most recent dungeon I did later in the game, they're very linear in the sense that it's not a straight line, but you go in each room once, you get the treasure there, and then you never have to repeat it. So a lot of the dungeons are very straightforward. So they're still kind of better than the ones that are in the console games, but I think the game has done like Oracle of Ages, I believe, I think are my high watermark for dungeons in the 2D Zelda games. I think Minish Cap has some really good ones as well. So it's good to see them back, but they're not in the top three. But I still like them. It's still nice to revisit them. It's nostalgic in that way.
Yeah, it's more
I guess
like because the recent Zelda entries have really shied away from the dungeon aspect, and it's just like it's one of those. It's like, oh, it's good to be back. That like there's still like dungeons are still relevant in the Zelda in these mainline Zelda series. Because Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom shied away from them, and that was kind of like, even though they're still excellent games, that was definitely a sore point for like traditional Zelda fans.
Mhm.
Like the shrines really aren't dungeons.
It's a little bit kind of like in Skyward Sword, the main thing that game was like advertised is like, well, the whole world is a dungeon. Like even getting to the dungeon, you had to do dungeon like things. And of course, that's a 3D Zelda, so it's not a true comparison. This game has a little bit of that. Like usually you'll have to do some platforming, some combat, some lock and key puzzles, even before you get to the dungeon. So I want to take credit for that a little bit. Obviously, there is a little bit of a puzzle aspect to it for like which echoes you happen to find. And echoes are not really hidden. And whether they're objects or monsters, they glow yellow. And every single time you defeat a monster that you don't have the echo for, it'll like shrink into a miniature size of itself. Once you defeat it, you go up to it and you pick it up. But there are some echoes that are way more useful than others. For instance, this is not really a spoiler. It's just a very, very useful echo that if you get this, it will trivialize a lot of the movement like based platforming in the game. Is that you'll go into like one of those 2D rooms where you go down a ladder, and instead of having the top down view, you have a left right view. Very like Link's Awakening did this, Oracle games did this, very, very traditional. And you'll have they're not called thwomps, but you'll have the platforms that if you go under them, they'll try to crush you. I forget what they're called in this game. They're called like platform dons or something like that. And then as soon as they try to crush you, you can defeat it and pick it up as an echo. And then when you summon it, it will just like elevator platform you up pretty damn high, up cliffs, up rock faces. Like in some of the trailers, they showed Zelda linking to like a crawling spider and doing the reverse bond and going up a cliff. Where once I got this platform, which you can get pretty early, like before the second dungeon, or maybe after the second dungeon, around the second dungeon, you just summon this elevator platform and it trivializes almost all locomotion in the game. It's nice to have. It makes a lot of the mini games a lot easier. It makes you able to access areas. I won't say sequence breaking, but earlier than you think you would normally be able to intend to. But it does kind of mean like, I'm just going to use this echo 1,000 times, where every other echo might be doing something interesting, but they're far less useful, so I barely summon them.
Yeah.
And there's also come sort of things where like I almost feel like there's too many echoes. Where like you get a like one of the things they show is you get a basic bed, and the basic bed actually is a very useful echo. I still use it a lot, even 15 hours in. But you also get like eventually you can visit Zelda's room in the castle and get Zelda's bed, and it costs more to summon, and the only difference I believe is that if you rest in it, it heals you faster. But when I'm summoning beds, I'm not using them to heal me. I'm using them as platforms. So I'm just like, I'm never going to summon this bed. I'm just going to keep summoning the basic bed because it's cheaper. And if I ever need a heal, I'm just going to use a potion or a fairy or something. So they're not, and I'm not saying every echo has to be uh, equally useful. I just think it might have been more cool to have like 30 very interesting, very distinct echoes rather than, I don't know what the total is, 70, but 40 of them are mostly useless sort of thing. That's kind of where I'm at right now. But of course, I'm trying to keep an open mind. I might watch a video later and they're like, by the way, did you know you could combine these two echoes to do this thing? And I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. So I'm keeping an open mind. There's something that I'm sure there are a number of echoes that I thought were useless, and then I just haven't utilized them in the most useful way yet. But yeah, my opinions on uh Echoes of Wisdom do align pretty similarly with Alex, the written review up on the site. It doesn't seem like it's a super long game. It's about, I've heard people who have played it. Some people, of course, have played it early. 20 to 25 hours if you're pretty completionist about it. So it's, and of course, if you mainlined it, I'm sure you could go a bit quicker. So a little bit longer than Link's Awakening, about the same length as a lot of the other later stage 2D Zelda games. Very, very nostalgic, very comfort food. If you don't like 2D Zelda games, you won't like this. If you do like 2D Zelda games, you will like this. If you haven't played a Zelda game, the main difference here is that it's a lot more guided and straightforward than the console games, with a little bit more focus on dungeon. But I think this game is still a little bit more focused on just like the flavor of the world rather than being a pure like I would still go back to like Oracle or Minish Cap for like the true 2D dungeon experience, or go back to Link to the Past, obviously a classic there. But very good game. Not going to surprise you in any real ways. I wish it did a little bit more with the Zelda mechanic, but it doesn't do bad. It just does pretty well.
Yeah, yeah. These are pretty fair assessments of it. I think it's just like I kind of I'm interested to see what people find like in terms of like how flexible the ecosystem really is, because I'm sure people will find a lot of fucked up ways to really utilize echoes, like you said earlier. Like I'm just don't ever underestimate human creativity.
Yeah, it's not on the same level as Tears of the Kingdom. We're not going to see like Gundams going or
Yeah.
like catapults slinging Koroks across the field. But there's a little bit of room for inventiveness here. I think it pulls just enough from the crafting system and the not the true like Ultra Hand systems from Tears of the Kingdom, but similar-ish stuff with the Echo and the bonding, that it's pared down significantly, but it's fun, it's cozy, it'll be a fun game to like give newer Zelda players, younger Zelda players, and people who have the nostalgia for it. I think it's a game that they'll enjoy plenty. It's a good game. We were looking at some other things to talk about this week. Obviously, we have a lot of games coming out in the early October timeframe that have released demos. Romancing Saga 2, Metaphor, but Metaphor is coming out in 2 weeks. Romancing Saga 2 is coming out in let me check here,
Like October
mid
24th, I think.
October, so like 3.5 weeks. So we'll talk about those games in full once they release, rather than talking about the demo and then turning around within a couple weeks and talking about the full release. But obviously those demos are out. We do have people in our Discord channel that have been playing through those. I've seen a lot of differing takes on the Metaphor demo. So a lot of people are playing through that. That seems to be pretty substantial. And it's a few weeks old at this point, but a lot of people have been really excited about the Romancing Saga 2 demo. But we're going to talk about Kaino Kiseki, which obviously just released in Japan. This is the newest entry in the Kiseki series. It's the third game in the Kuro sub-series. You can think of it in that way. But we're not going to spoil anything here, but we do have a few people on staff, including Josh, who have been following the release of Kai no Kiseki. So because we don't know when we're going to see it in English, and we have a few months before we go through Daybreak 2's official English release, you had mentioned that you just wanted to chat kind of briefly about Kai no Kiseki in terms of its release, not in terms, of course, anything involving the story or spoilers in that case, but just in terms of its placement within the series overall.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, we'll definitely talk about the premise of it. I think it's hard to
Yeah.
talk about the game without even like establishing what it's about. And Chow has been checking it out, too. So, like you said, there's the Legend of Heroes, Kai no Kiseki, and then the subtitle for it is Farewell, O Zamoria. This follows after several months after the events of Trails Through Daybreak 2, which will release in the West sometime in early 2025. This is an interesting game because this is structured in a lot in the way of like Hajimari no Kiseki or Trails into Reverie and so forth, where you kind of have a separate parties or route selection type of structure to this game, much like Reverie.
It
But
takes a while to get there. I still haven't even unlocked the route selection yet. So.
it's not like it doesn't open up right away because it does a lot of like build. It ramps up to it. Let's say, and there's still very much like Vaughn is still the main protagonist. Vaughn Arkwright is like the protagonist of the Calvard arc, and he's still firmly the main character in this game, even though he's sharing that main character role like through different routes. He still has like the most substantial um arc and route to this game for this. So like going into this game, I was like, no, like I play this along with my friend because me and him interpret the game for other people in a Discord for other people who are tuning in. And we're both fairly knowledgeable on what's going on and what's being said in it, and we're very like admittedly pretty down on like how Trails Through Daybreak 2 was handled. I won't say why. I mean, people can make their form their own opinions for themselves if they've yet to play it, and especially when it comes gets a Western release. But me and him were pretty unified on like this. We didn't have a high opinion of it. I'll keep it at that.
Well, I'm
So
probably in the same boat. I think a lot of people get filtered from the last part of the game because the pacing just went down the drain.
I
near
mean,
the end
yeah,
of the game.
I won't get into why.
But yeah,
Yeah. So the premise of Kaine Kiseki is that there's this basically this operation called Star Taker happening in the Calvard region, and it's basically their the big initiative to launch into space, pretty much. And the whole thing is like they're doing these test shuttle launches into space, and then eventually they're gonna launch like a human into space, and there's like a really big event in that region. So due to the ongoing like several factors around this operation, they're inviting some people. Some people are inviting. Some people are sneaking into Calvard. Like for example, Reen from the Cold Steel series makes his return in Kaino Kiseki, but like he's explicitly like invited from Calvard to kind of uh partake into some elements around it. While other characters like Kevin from the Sky series are there on like he has his own assignment, and that there's a whole it gets revealed, but he has his own personal reasons for why he's
he's part of the
participating.
team.
Yeah, he's participating kind of Kiseki, not necessarily part of the team, but for his own reasons why he's there. So it's kind of an interesting structure because like the beginning of this game is like this whole unified training exercise where like the very beginning prologue tutorial teams is kind of an interesting spread where you have like Von Ferry and Bergard, and then the secondary party is like Reen, Altina,
And Kevin.
and Kevin, and then the third party is
You want to keep the third team a secret.
the third team. I'll just say right now, there's going to be some Reverie spoilers for C's route here because it's hard to kind of having to like refer to him as C. So be aware that I'm just going to be freely speak about that because it's so trying to keep C's secret at this point. Especially if it's already released in the West is kind of it's dumb. So if you haven't played C's route in Reverie yet, be aware.
Go to the next time.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So the third team is Rufus. What was it? Rufus.
Rufus of Reset, Crow, and
Yeah.
then there is Lapis if you count Lapis as a teammate.
No,
Right.
no. Rizet wasn't with Rufus. There. I'm trying to
No,
remember.
no. She was with Crow, and then
no. Oh
Rufus
yeah. They. Oh yeah. I forgot. You operate two teams, and then they come in, for like a tutorial boss fight. So they were like the. Okay. Yeah. I forgot that you don't control a third team yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then like the.
I think you can actually lose the first fight. I'm not sure. I think the first fight you get like a bonus SP if you could beat them. So then it's like it's trying to teach you a tutorial about now you can kind of like the game can warn you about spamming S breaks from bosses, I guess, in a
I mean
way.
that you've enabled it always warn you about incoming S breaks. Like you get the warning for sure, the alarm. Um, but the whole there's several like new gameplay elements that they teach you here because it still has the action turn-based hybrid system. Obviously, they've been expanded upon where the action system has other characters actually actively fighting with you pretty often in the field. So it kind of gets a bit chaotic, but they do they help you out a little. You have this new system called the ZOC, the ZOC system,
Yeah, it just like
where
kind
you
of slows down time.
yeah, it slows down time. There's like especially useful for like shining palms, for example, where they uh, retreat really or run away really fast. So obviously you want to use that the Zoc to slow down time and hit them. You do more damage during Zoc, and it's just generally useful against like enemies that like there's actually enemies that like aggressively like fire projectiles at you on the field now. So and that's what that system is like. That's how they teach you the system. So you can
Like
use it any way you want. It's a refillable resource that like fills up over time by itself, but also you can accelerate its resource generation by just like hitting enemy.
like both
Yeah.
gameplay elements has been expanded a lot. So
Yeah.
just from the action part of it, I was like, damn, this feels really fast paced. It could be even an action game on its own, right? With how it goes, right?
Yeah. It's not like a true combo system like DMC or something, but it's way faster than what like the first two Daybreak
And
games.
then like once you get to like the first act, then your character even has awakening. Like certain characters have awakening. So for example, like Bond can go awakening. That's kind of like a double trigger, right? So normally it's supposed to be he's supposed to transform into Grendel, but not yet. Some people like Judith has awakening because she could go into her Grimcat's form, and then she can do that, and you have like insane amount of damage during like your awakening, right? So you get
Yeah.
like some of those features as well, right?
Yeah, and then like with Breen, for example, since it's his first time into the action combat role, like he can do like spirit unification through the awakening as well, um, and all that sort of stuff. So and that consumes like a trance resource called trance. Um, and then the turn-based mode is interesting because they brought back sort of like the Brave Orders from the Cold
But
Steel
it costs
series.
your S boost, and I think
Yeah.
S boost is like a very valuable resource in this game now
Yes.
compared to like the last game because this resource is like insanely useful now. It could be used for like everything: S breaks, shard orders, and then it's like, what about X chain? I think you can only X chain when you're
Yeah, you have
boosted
to
too.
you have to boost to use EX chain. Yeah,
Yeah, so
so for this game, like the shard boost mechanic is back from the previous Daybreak games, but it is very you're juggling a lot with it now. Instead of just like consuming it and just like buff an attack or like get access to S breaks like how Daybreak 2 utilized it. Now like you have like the Brave Order system back, so like characters in your party, even though they're not out on the field or they could be like the extra support role, like you can actually consume like normally two S boosts for like a buff that lasts for a certain amount of time, like say like a defense up, and then it's good for like taking like 10 hits, for example. And it's really useful because a lot of enemies, especially on like the hard difficulty, like hit really hard. So like even like using it defensively is very valuable. And at the same time, if you're fighting against like other parties in the game, they can use their own like S boost Brave Order as well. So you can actually like overwrite and negate that by by using your own um S boost Brave Order against them to overwrite it at the cost of like an additional S boost meter. So there's like this whole kind of like almost a rock paper scissors mechanic of like kind of trying to outmaneuver, outflank, and strategize around like what the enemies are doing.
I think they fixed the Brave Order system because I remember in like Cold Steel 4, it's like people just spam the Brave Order
Yeah,
once and then
yeah,
they never spam it again, and you're like, okay, so what was really the point of that, really, right?
yeah. This game also has like really it has some good things and bad things about like the on what they've added. Like for example, like debuff immunity is like a new thing in this game. So like you use debuff immunity to effectively cleanse and like the debuffs against you, but then enemies will like immediately just like you know strip your debuff immunity and and hit you with debuffs again, pretty much. So like it's almost like, why did they even add like debuff immunity when they're going to be immediately stripped from us, you know? So it's like, it's weird shit like that they added to it. You also have, like, what we were talking about earlier, like the EX chain and the blitz system. Blitz system is kind of like, it sounds cool on paper.
But
But it's
it's not
really,
much. It's just like people attacking from the back, sort of.
yeah. So like when you know when a character has a turn, sometimes they'll have like a blitz link to like either a reserve, a random character in reserve, pretty much. So like, so your character will attack or take an action, and like if they're nearby someone in battle, like in previous games, they have that person will do an action to follow up, and then like an extra person from reserve will also come in and do like a quick attack as well, pretty much. And it sounds cool on paper because like at least you do something with reserve party members. Um, instead of them doing nothing. But at the same time, it's kind of like, it's whatever. It's a whatever mechanic. Um,
But X chain is, I think, is the most important thing. I think a lot of the time is like, you know how when you stun like enemies and stuff, and they don't really do anything. They just take a little bit more damage in previous games, right?
yeah,
This time is like now you can use X chains. I think the whole mechanic about killing bosses as soon as you can is trying to like utilize X chain to its perfection, because you do insane amount of damage with X chains.
yeah. Go explain X chains on how the for people who don't know.
Like I believe that when an enemy is stunned and then
Mhm.
you use like an S boost, it's like there's a thing that says that, like the next command will do a follow attack called X chain, and the X chain will be like a party member inside, and they come in and they do like extra like I don't know, like 4 times the damage that you were
Yeah, it's like
doing. So
pretty bulk.
it's like insane, right?
Yeah. They have like their own like cut it and shit.
Yeah,
It's
I think
awesome.
it does more damage than an S craft from what I did tested, right?
Like there are definitely different ways to like abuse some of these new systems for sure. So there's a lot of flexibility on how you build certain team compositions, especially because once you unlock Grim Garden, for example, which is got like it's a returning mechanic from Daybreak 2. It's not it's kind of like Reverie Corridor, but it's a little bit more involved gameplay wise, I guess.
Well, I mean, two it has the Martian card, and I think
Yeah, it's Marching Garden, but
yeah.
I tried this because you have to realize that, like, people who don't know what that is yet from Daybreak 2, so I'm trying to compare it to Reverie Corridor because they don't know what Marching Garden is yet. Um, so that whole thing is back. It's kind of I think that this game kind of suffers a little bit from pacing in terms of like they kind of incorporate Grim Garden too much to kind of pad out some of the content.
They're throwing a lot in. I mean, it's like the first beginning is kind of like an Azure type of pacing at the beginning. They're like doing like, oh, we're just doing all this questing, and it's kind of like a retread, and you're like, oh, I already know all this if you played like the past games, and like,
Yeah,
do we really need a recap?
they're trying. Yeah, it's basically like a whole extended recap intro of like reintroducing characters. Just in case you are for
You
some
didn't play
reason
the
starting out
past
with this
game.
game. If you're crazy enough and starting out with
But
this game, you forgot.
I feel like they don't need that anymore. Like I think the most important thing in this game as a lore person is the timely verse system, where you're like, oh, you could just press the left button on the um was it the D-pad, and then you get like a glossary about these terms that you might have
The timely
forgotten, right?
words. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like the FF16 system where like
The
during a
active lore.
conversation, you can bump up, you can press the D-pad to have a list of terms that are like relevant in the conversation that they're throwing out, and then you can get like explanation of like, oh, okay, what are they
I think
talking
that's a
about?
good thing for like the trail series, instead of like that random flashback and like
Dude, they
like
fucking love the fucking random it's not like a whole flashback scene, but like
yeah, but you can like get like a picture of like, oh, it's like I remember this
illustration.
town,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
see like a picture of Crow. It's
You
like, of
remember this
course I know that
character? Yeah,
reference, but I
yeah,
don't need that, right? Just
yeah.
like
It's a pretty as a Reverie style type of game. It is a pretty heavy gated. Like, you need knowledge from so many past games to start linking things together in this game, because there's stuff from obviously you need to have, like, if you want to know who Kevin is, like, like his kind of whole deal of why he can do things, certain things in this game. You kind of need to play those games. Um, there are how am I going to say this? There are things that happen throughout this game that make certain concepts from Zero to Owl, or the Crossbell games, relevant. Um, end of Cold Steel 4 into Reverie relevant. and Daybreak 2, like Daybreak 2's events is like more involved and relevant than what you might think at first, because a lot of people refer to Daybreak 2, and part of it is Falcom's terminology of the way they how they talked about it post-mortem, right? But they call it like a quote unquote like filler game, pretty much, because of the way that like you certain how that game is structured. And like I would have been inclined to agree before this game, but the way that they kind of frame and reference and follow up on the events on that game, it's like, oh, there are definitely things about it that like you need to have known for certain scenes to make sense. Because they're playing with some interesting concepts, um, in this game. So it's definitely one of those things. It's like you it was going to be the case because a lot of people kind of started with Kuro no Kiseki or Daybreak One, like that was like admittedly a good quote unquote entry point
A
to the
good
series.
entry point, but that
but
just
but
kind
but
of
but
fell
but,
down the window.
but it's like, but it's like a one and done thing, and I kind of stress that to the people. It's like, okay, it's like if you want to just have like a good solid JRPG that you just like kind of like just kind of like a one and done thing, like Daybreak One is totally fine for that. That's kind of like the strength of that game. It's like you're introduced to a new region, a new cast. You don't really need to know much of past events to like appreciate and understand the story and enjoy these characters. Pretty much. Obviously, there are things in it that like they'll reference to, but you won't really need to know. Like if when Ren says Estelle and Joshua to Vaughn, you don't have to be like, oh fuck, I'm like missing so much context. It's like no, it's okay. It's like a one line pretty much in that game. But as things have gone on after Daybreak, like Daybreak 2, you'll definitely need to know like Cold Steel 4 and Reverie, especially Reverie, for um Daybreak 2. And then this one, you have it's pulling on so many other different past events from different games because things are starting to like really coalesce once again in this game, like kind of unifying a lot of and expanding those concepts introduced in past games. So it's obviously gonna be the case of like this is gonna be very 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 tough to recommend to someone that hasn't played like a lot of these games already. Um, especially if, like if you're just I'm trying to think about like if you're trying to go to the like kind of Kiseki Fresh, for instance, for whatever reason, it's like you can do fine in terms of like gameplay, but like you should abandon all hope when it comes to story, like understanding the story because it's already like you need to know a lot already
Yeah,
to
there's a huge build up to
yeah
this.
yeah like you have to understand like like even small stuff. It's like for example, if you played Reverie and then you skip Daybreak 2 and then go into Kai, you know, a lot of will be like, why is this character here or why are they involved? You know, um, like stuff like that. It's just like it's tough already. So I think it's an interesting game. There's some cool gameplay system advancements of like how they continue to advance the formula of that action and turn-based hybrid system because there's definitely also a game that like you should be comfortable by now on how those systems operate because the game does not hold your hand. Like enemies are very aggressive in their attacks, and then the action flow is pretty fast paced. Like you have to be kind of on your shit on that. Um, but I think just this kind of like drawing on like first 40-hour impression so far is like there's some real bad pacing issues to the ramp up of this game where like things don't really start moving in a direction until like maybe like 12 to 15 hours in.
Yeah, even like the
Uh,
first part of the first act is like these side quests felt like a repeat of like Daybreak One. It's like, oh, a guy got scammed. Can I call like, the fixers, which is the Spriggan, to fix this for me? It's like, oh man, it's like I feel like I've seen this before, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I talked about this
So
when I played Daybreak 1 and talked about it back in June. And like I don't think they really sold the concept of these are jobs the bracers don't dare touch because a lot of it just felt like not quite like the bracer could have done this. Like I didn't quite buy this is a Spriggan, this is dark, this is mature stuff. This has to be off the record. And it's like there was a little bit of that. I don't want to discount it completely, but only barely, only because I was thinking about it. Yeah. I don't know.
I will say though, like obviously I can't go into it, but like despite some of the pacing problems I have with this game, there are still some really, really, really strong scenes in this game that like kind of make the payoff of like the new Calvert cast worth it. Like there are definitely some scenes in this game. It's like, oh, I didn't know Falcom would go in this direction, and like when these characters are presented the way that they did, oh, that's really, really cool. And like in the way that they actually actively crafted and like the payoff of these scenes is like it's actually really well done. Something I would have never really expected out of Falcom. And obviously, I can't really go into detail like what those scenes are, but I'm interested to see where this game stops. Because a lot of the game so far is like in terms of like it's leading up to this like big shuttle launch of launching the first team into space. So kind of the bulk of the game so far is like the 2 to 3 days before that shuttle launch. So I'm wondering, it's like, okay, I wonder where the actual end point is for this game and how it will end, and if it's a conclusive ending or not. I have no idea. So I don't know. I'll like
You'll find out next week.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's been interesting to kind of just see unfold. It's been crazy.
I'm trying to think
yeah.
though, like the whole games from Kai to Trails in the Sky 1, which is getting a remake next year, is like 9 in-game years or something like that, right? 8. And I remember in Trails in the Sky 1, they're like, wow, a telephone. And now they're like, wow, a spaceship within 9 years. Orbital technology is crazy.
It's like Grin Lagann.
Yeah. The whole progression of technology in Trails is fucked up, but also like different regions are just like so technologically behind that it's kind of crazy too.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be like on the same it's supposed to be like on the same continent, but like the leftmost regions like it's stuck like almost in the fantasy ages, while like the rightmost regions are like the most modern. They have like telephones, like smartphones, cars now launching from space. So it's a crazy fucking world.
There's a term they call that in like manga or something, because this ongoing manga goes on for like 30 years. Like they were using like like old school like holding phones, right? And then when you read like the latest issue, they're using cell phones when it took place in like the 70s or something when it first started, right?
Yeah,
so I forget what the term is called, but there's something called that.
Yeah. So kind of Kiseki. We don't have a release date for it. It's not even confirmed for the West yet, but obviously it probably will get some announcement after Daybreak 2 gets an official Western release. So we're all crossing our fingers for like maybe a late 2025 release at the earliest. But if not, maybe we'll slip into 2026 as well. But I'm interested to see like how people process Daybreak 2, and then obviously however this game shakes out, because this game is it's very dense. But I will say that I kind of feel a tiny bit bad of like because they keep on introducing like new elements. Like a very new minor element of this game is like Voin has a food blog, so you upload like food spots, and like in the various people in the cast give them a review. So it's just like another like flavor thing that Nice America has to localize as well, and then they'll have to do all like the timely words like entries as well.
It's probably gonna call it something else, because I don't know. A lot of these terms never got the exact terms. Like Reveries like cross story became Trails to Walk or something.
Yeah.
So we're not sure what these terms are gonna be officially called.
Yeah.
What do you think the title will be?
Trails of the Realm.
Of the Realm.
It's kind of like encompassing the world, so it's like it has to be like trail, like if they're gonna go in the spirit of it, it's like Trails of the World, or like
For the Realm. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like Kai is like a realm, like a different world kind of term, right? That's kind of like the direct translation of it. So
yeah. So I don't know. Who knows? I have no idea.
But that's my guess, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I hope they keep the subtitle though, but they already dropped Crimson Sin, so that's already too late.
Yeah, they don't. All these fucking things all the subtitles get dropped, like the end of Saga, which is a dumb subtitle.
It is a dumb silent because it's not
Oh,
the
that
end.
reminds me. So a tangent here. Are we wrapping up the discussion on Kaino Kiseki?
Yeah,
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 this is
but
a, this is a, this is a tangent, but it's something that you would have talked about last week. The new Yakuza game, Like a Dragon game.
yeah,
Like that one still has the Gaiden. So the English name is Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Like they had to get Yakuza in there. And but in Japan it's just a Gaiden title, like the man who lost his name. But they don't want to use
yeah.
Gaiden in the West. It's very strange.
Yeah, I imagine there's like some weird meetings about that because I think they did say like they're wondering if they're gonna have Gaiden in it for the Western release or not. Because I don't know, like they're it's a miracle that these games sell because like the naming convention for them is so fucking it changes from game to game. It feels like Sega is like the Western Sega branch can't make up their mind on how a consistent naming scheme anymore for these games. And like the game the name in Hawaii is like Ryuga Gotoku 8 Gaiden, and it's like Pirates in Hawaii or something like that, or Pirates Hawaii. Um, which
But
is
even like
funny
the
for
mainline
that one.
games had subtitles, and we got the one for 6, Song of Life, but we didn't get the ones for 7 or 8, which were like Whereabouts Light and Darkness, and I don't remember what 8's was.
I
Even though
mean,
they
they,
didn't
they
even
did
call
that.
it
Yeah,
8.
that's a consistent thing because like the what we consider the older Yakuza games here also had subtitles that they always dropped
So
in the Western release.
they only gave us one for 6, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah 6 was like the exception for whatever reason. So it's even back then they didn't have the consistent naming scheme for whatever reason.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
before we go into news, we do have a few previews up from TGS from James. And one of those is a hands-on preview with Like a Dragon, Parry Yakuza in Hawaii. He also went hands-on with a few more games we'll talk about later in the podcast. Monster Hunter Wilds, he has a hands-on preview for that, as well as the first Berserker Kazan, the Souls-like featuring Ben Starr. That's the way I think of that
yeah,
one.
nice.
But
Yeah,
yeah, long story short, we have 3 at the time of recording hands-on previews written for the site from James, and I'm assuming he'll have more. Of course, we'll follow back up with James when he returns from Tokyo Game Show, and of course, we are going to go into a lot of the news announcements, trailers coming out of TGS. But we do
yeah.
have those.
Before we go into that, I just want to say that like the set list for the Falcom JDK band um first part of their concert at TGS is really funny because they pitch it they market it as like since Kaino Kiseki is a brand new release in Japan, we're gonna have the Falcom, like they always do these they always have the Falcom JDK band like doing live concerts at TGS, like mini concerts. So and it's like split up into 2 parts like for each public day. So like the set list for this first part was like the BGM for the very first like web commercial for Kaida Kiseki with like the crazy violin, which is really cool, and the opening theme of the game, which I really like. And then the rest of it is really funny because it's like the next one is like Inevitable Struggle from the Crossbell games. Then the opening theme of Azure after it. Then to celebrate Trails of the Sky, the first remake, they did like Sophisticated Fight, the battle theme of Sky live. Along with like some like a it transitioned to like a medley of like field themes from the Sky games, which is like really cool. Then they did the ending theme of of first chapter. Uh, then it goes really weird because to wrap it up, their last 2 songs after that were like the Nayura no Kiseki opening theme and Go Fight, which is their goofy song for the Falcom I forgot, like Gakuen or something. But it was a wild concert. It was they stopped to do the second part. I don't know if they're gonna have another new set list or not, but it's kind of like it was really just funny to see like they kind of went backwards in time into like a really goofy ending spot, and I kind of love
And covering some of the more like Nayuta is kind of an oddball thrown in there.
it.
But
It's like okay.
all right, we'll go into the news here, and like we kind of stated, there's a lot coming out of TGS. Of course, we did also get some updates, long-awaited updates from some level 5 projects. We also did have a state of play with a few things that were relevant to our interests. the order I have here is trying to put some major announcements up front, some updates for some previous announcements after, and then obviously as normal the sales updates and just new release dates kind of at the back. But otherwise the order is just kind of random. We're going to start out here with probably the most surprising announcement, at least when I came back from my vacation and started looking at the headlines. This is the one that I was like, oh, wait, really? This came out of the State of Play, and this is the announcement from Gung Ho Entertainment of a new remastered collection for Lunar. So this is a remaster of Lunar Silver Star Story Complete and Lunar 2 Eternal Blue Complete. Those were the Sega PlayStation remasters of Lunar 1 and 2. I have not played these original games, but I've always
I'm
kind
an
of
expert
seen.
of Lunar. Trust
I
me,
am not
I am.
surprised. All right, Chow, take it away.
So, okay, so they were originally released on the Sega CDs, and then they were remade on the PlayStation. But the first game has a wild treatment. Like the story is completely rewritten, and the gameplay is completely different, right? The second game is it's more true to the Sega CD version. It's like or closer, but it's still vastly different, I would say. So, one of the biggest difference with like the Sega CD version versus like the PlayStation version for like Internal Blue, which is the second game, is that you get like this magic experience points to level up your abilities. And for working design changes, they like to change the system or anything that thinks to get rid of to add more difficulty to the game or some shit. They will be like, oh, well, now it costs magic experience to save the game now because they don't want people to save anywhere like the original Japanese version does. So that's like some of the changes that you would get, right? But I don't think we want to talk about the gameplay aspect because nobody seems to know much about these games, right? So they're very simple, like old traditional RPGs. They
Yeah,
don't really
before we
have.
go into the too much more of the details here, I am interested in them, but just to make sure we get the key points here. So announced at a State of Play, but releasing for PC, Xbox, and Switch next year. From Gung Ho, they're the same team that did the Grandia remaster. So it's going to have an option to do it in the original view or in the remastered view. It'll have new voiceovers, both in the Japanese or a new English voiceover for the animation sequences. They have some like some of the traditional trappings of these remasters, like a sped up battle option and things like that. But yeah, coming out next year for all consoles and PC.
I don't know if I don't think it has new in Japanese voices. The English, yes, but
The
Japanese.
Oh,
English voices for sure, but the
yeah,
Japanese one is.
I was trying to be careful with my language. Yeah, the new English voices or Japanese. I didn't mean to transitive property that new to both things. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So the if you watch the English trailer, you could hear the lyrics of the song, the opening song, because that's the working design translation of the song. They completely rewrote the opening song because they find the original opening song kind of boring, so they kind of like just completely changed the lyrics. And the songs that you could hear in that intro, it's like, oh yeah, they're using those lines, but it sounds like a different person singing it, or maybe it is the original singer, but her voice sounds much older. I guess I don't know, right? So, but
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if like because because there was some indie project that came out and like had the original singer that's involved with them the implied that like she wasn't involved in this remaster. I'm not exactly 100% sure how that shook out. The flow of information is fucked up, but I'm not exactly sure like what's actually the truth behind um that. We just know that like we had the English song that a lot of people resonated with when they first played these games in the West.
because
Um,
if you know that Exceed also did like the what's it localization for the remake on the PSP, right, of Silver Star Story. They got the original singer back, but this time they used a lyrics that's more closer to the original Japanese translation, right? And
mhm,
people didn't seem to respond to that that new version too well, right? Even though it's more accurate to the Japanese version, right?
yeah, yeah,
So,
so yeah.
but
Cool.
yeah, you can see it from there. I am kind of hyped for these remasters because they're really hard to get, or at least play in some accessible in some form. I do prefer the Sega CD versions over the PlayStation versions, but they're not gonna remaster one of
Yeah, they're
those
not.
games.
Yeah,
Right?
I
I
guess
So,
agree
that
there.
I guess that's the main like footnote here that these are remasters of a remaster in some ways, where that original remaster, like you said, Chow, has already made taken liberties from the original game.
But at the same time, like, a lot of people in the West played the PlayStation One version, not the Sega CD version. So if you're appealing to nostalgia, you would do this version and not the Sega CD version because You want the one that most people in the West grew up with, at least when you're trying to market these
Well,
in the
I'm
West.
happy for it. That means my Sega CD version is a collector's item, and
Yeah,
that's going to be
There you
still
go.
worth $500 on eBay.
yeah, yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, but they have the usual modern conveniences, like battle speed up, um, for these.
I wonder if they
Um,
would change one of the things because this game had sort of like in Trails where you had to talk to the right person to get a book.
yeah,
Okay, in the original Lunar, you basically have to talk to the person at the right time to get a picture of them. It's a bromide, and it's like a collector's item. But the thing is, like, that's only a problem in the English version. Working design changed it that you can only like talk to people at the right time to get the picture, so they become like super easy to miss getting the whole thing. And I'm not sure if they would like change the gameplay to have like like the original Japanese version where
yeah.
you
It's
could
it's hard to tell, like if they're doing the working designs version or scaling back some of the working designs gameplay changes. I don't know exactly if they've really got into or detailed that whole
Yeah, I mean,
thing.
it's
Yeah,
gonna be like, I'm not sure how it goes. They also like made like two bosses like extremely hard in the working design version. I think it's like one of the dragons that you fight in Internal Blue, and there's this guy called Bert Bogar, I think is his name. I forgot his name. Um, but he was like a very difficult boss in the English version. Not much of a threat in the Japanese version, but in the English version, they like overtune this guy, and it's like super hard, right? So I'm not sure if they're gonna like reverse those changes as well, right?
yeah. So I mean,
Yeah,
it's a really
we can
cool announcement.
speculate, but it's hard to know.
Yeah, and also it's gonna have two new subtitle language options, in French and German, as well. So just making it more accessible to more languages, which is good. So yeah, I mean that's kind of like the whole summary of the announcement. It was a really cool out of nowhere announcement, and just having this re-release just to preserve it and make it accessible on modern platforms is it's a win-win. Hopefully it becomes like a really good version of the game, because I know a lot of people had misgivings with the Grania release when Gung Ho did that. So we'll have to see what
Well,
happens.
remind me, the Grande release, you couldn't toggle. Could you toggle between the art styles, or were you stuck with a new one?
I don't know if you. I can't. I don't remember. I just know there was like some fucked up graphical shit going on that made it look worse than than um the old version.
No,
So
Also, one
yeah,
gameplay tip for you guys: if you ever decide to buy this game, buy 4 bars of soap. Okay, that's all I need to tell you.
by 4 bars of soap. I will totally
yeah,
forget that when the
yeah,
game goes out.
yeah. I played these on PS1, but I don't have like a lot of memories about it, because it's
Okay,
like
so basically, you buy a soap. You can use the hot springs later,
I thought you were going to keep it mysterious.
yeah, just
but it's
leave
very
it,
hard to get to those hot springs. So make sure
just
you
leave it
have
at
four
that.
bars of soap. Make sure you have
Okay,
4 bars.
okay.
Okay. So a couple other game announcements from the last week. This is one that I think is a bit of a surprise. This was from Koei Tecmo's TGS stream. Atelier Resleriana is coming to consoles, but it's a different version from the Atelier Resleriana that released for mobile this year. Like we talked about how this was their flagship title for this year was a mobile game that was going to be kind of a celebration title that, with the free to play gameplay system, introducing characters from previous entries, etc., etc. Obviously, we have the recently announced Atelier Yumiya as the next mainline title coming out next year, but they are also working on Atelier Resleriana, the Red Alchemist, and the White Guardian as a console version releasing for.
Okay, timeout. So this is where everyone gets it wrong, and it's very obvious because no one played that game except me. There's not a console version of Atelier Resleriana. It is not the same game. It is a
I
different game that
was.
takes place in the same world as Resleriana.
I'm totally willing to let you continue, but I was going there just so you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, because
Okay.
you said it was a console version of that game. I'm like, timeout. It's not that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because I've heard that misinformation from so many outlets that like it kind of pisses me off, because it is, once again, it is not the same game as that Atelier Resleriana mobile game. It is a different cast, different characters. Resna is not the main character of this game. They showed off two different characters entirely in the teaser for this, and it's coming to PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC via Steam in 2025. Um, and that's all they've really shown off, is like some of the environments. Some of the environments are clearly from that mobile game, and to showcase that is in the same world as Resleriana. But this is not a console version of that game. There's an entirely new game set in the same world as that mobile game. Um, that's pretty much the information around it. So I just want to clear up that misunderstanding because people are like, "Oh, finally they're porting the mobile game to a proper console game," and that is not the case. So yeah, I just wanted to clear up that misunderstanding right away because I've heard it from so many other sites, and it's really it's super obvious if you just like looked at the mobile game and then this game, like you can see that they're two entirely different games because they have different characters.
Yeah, the key arts are completely different.
Yeah. So sorry if that was rude of me to butt in, but it's just like I don't want to give people the wrong idea right away that it's like that game.
Better tell them hard truth.
I mean, it's annoying to me because it's like blatant misinformation, and it sucks for the people who are getting excited for like information that's not true.
I think
I
my
don't.
favorite one is the Kai no Kiseki thing where they watch a Chinese stream where they blitz through the game in 20 hours and then they're like spreading misinfo
I
and
mean, that
then
happens to
hating
fucking
the game.
that happens to every Kiseki game. So that's just like
And then everyone would pretend
that's a
that they know
given.
Japanese the next day for some stupid reason.
It's awesome. I love spreading misinformation. So yeah, that's kind of the sum of it. I mean, it's cool that like this they're doing this, and I think what's cool about it, right? Because as someone who's played that mobile game that's on PC as well, is that the Atelier characters from other games that get like basically isekai'd in to it, like exist within the world now, like as they're trying to find a way back to the original world. So they kind of like open up shop and have like different roles and ongoing journeys inside the world that they've been isekai'd in, which is Resleriana's world. Um,
Mhm.
so you'll probably see them in this game. Who knows if they're going to be party members or not, but for sure they're definitely like characters you can interact with in this game, um, most assuredly. And it'll be interesting to see if you see that core cast from Resleriana make an appearance in this game. I don't really know if I buy the quote unquote fan theory. I would say that like this is indicative of like Resleriana like failing because they're making a console game based on that world, or for some people get the information wrong and think there's a console version. Um but like I think like because it's kind of those one of these weird things where like this has two different main characters. That's like, okay, then why are they doing this instead of like an in-game event in the game? It's just really hard to say at this point like what the scope of this game is and what they do with it. I think the concept is really neat. What I really hope for is they keep the combat system of Resleriana for this game and not try to invent some new stuff, because I really like the turn-based combat and like the turn manipulation um in Resleriana. Like that's actually a really compelling um battle system that they have in that game. So if they can keep that battle system and make it like more complex, more refined, like there's like a game I would theoretically be into because I actually like the gameplay of that game. Um so yeah, we'll see. And once again, sorry. I mean,
No, no,
I kind of
I was kind of teeing it up in a way that was awkward. I should have just stated it outright. But yeah, and it's good to see like that. So obviously, Atelier Yumiya is we have a release date worldwide in March next year, and this is also slated worldwide for next year. I guess they haven't explicitly said it's a worldwide release, but they've said it's coming next year for all regions. So it's Atelier fans eating good, I suppose.
yeah. I mean, yeah. They have an official Western trailer, so I assume it's coming
Yeah,
just
it's one of those things
worldwide.
where they've released two
Yeah.
games in a row worldwide, and this one likely the same unless plans change. But yeah, have
Yeah.
early in the year we'll have Yumiya, and potentially later in the year we'll have uh, Red Alchemist and White Guardian, and of course the mobile game is not shutting down, so that'll keep going. There's two more announcements from indie studios before we go into updates for previously announced games coming out of TGS and otherwise this week. This one is a debut project for a small Canadian studio called Rio Games called Threads of Time. This is announced for Xbox Series and PC. Doesn't have a release window, but does have an announcement trailer. And on our website, we do have a series of screenshots alongside the announcement. Threads of Time is a debut project, very inspired by 16-bit RPGs. They explicitly call out Chrono Trigger. They show that both in their animated cutscenes in the trailer, as well as in several of the gameplay moments and the screenshots. They pull on that thread a lot in the announcement here for Threads of Time.
I I have I have thoughts about this game. Well, not necessarily like the thoughts of the game. I think the trailer that they released seems really cool. They have like this nice pixel art style, almost like an HD 2D esque type of game. Has a little bit too much bloom, but what they showed seems to have potential because it's like a time traveling RPG. So I see a lot of like different time periods that you travel through. During the trailer when they unveiled it at the Xbox event at Tokyo Game Show, we knew about this game in advance because they sent us an embargoed email about just giving us a heads up of like make sure to, so we have proper prep time to like put up the announcement of it. If Adam was here, he would probably agree. The headline of this email is one of the most. It's a really bad headline. I will read this verbatim on the headline. The spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger has arrived. The JRPG Threads of Time revealed during the TGS. There's a lot going on to the headline. You cannot call yourself the spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger when you have absolutely no thread to the original project with your staff, especially. Like for example, Eiyuden Chronicle, right? It's pretty. If they said we are the spiritual successor to Suikoden with Eiyuden Chronicle, that would makes and they pitched it like that, and they makes a lot of sense because a lot of the key staff members and creative members of Eiyuden Chronicle were involved with that, with Murayama, Koano, and so forth, right? So that makes sense. You being the spiritual successor to Suikoden with Eiyuden Chronicle makes sense because you have a lot of the very key core pillars of that staff working on it, like creatives on it. This has no connection whatsoever. Any key staff members really from Chrono Trigger to call yourself, to warrant labeling yourself the spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger. Am I crazy?
No, it's
No.
and it's there's almost like levels to this. Like in the yeah, like you said, the trailer on its own, what they've shown, the screenshots on their own, it looks pretty, it looks promising. Now, obviously, that's all we have to go on just from a visual standpoint. Like Seas of Stars, I think in a lot of ways was received kind of lukewarm because it had a lot of the same sort of vibes to it, where it presented very well, showcased off in trailers very well, but maybe at the end just didn't quite come through at the end. Where here it's like, okay, it shows promise, but in their like press release for the game, within the very first sentence, they say a modern 2.5D love letter to the JRPG classics. Like, even if that's true, I don't think you have to lead with that. Just let it speak for itself. Like, I think of that Expedition 33, where when those devs talk about their game, they talk about what their favorite games were growing up, and you can kind of see what their inspirations are, and that's perfectly fine. But they don't say this is the spiritual successor to Persona or whatever. And so I just don't think, like, even if it's all true, you don't have to lead with it. I don't think you need to crutch on putting Chrono Trigger in the subject line of your email to sell your game. Your game can stand on its own. I don't know.
Yeah, it also doesn't feel great when one of the screenshots that they released was like emulating the campfire scene from Chrono Trigger as well. So it's like, oh, look at us, we're doing the thing. It's like, like I want to give this game a shot, and I plan to, I definitely
I'll give
am
it an
interested
honest
in
shot.
trying.
I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
looks
but
promising. Obviously,
but my interest in a game immediately goes down like 50% when a game tries to do this kind of stuff of like when they release language like we're the spiritual successor to this RPG that we have no ties to, or we're fixing the JRPG genre or whatever. We're fixing these tired RPG tropes.
I think you already have this conversation with
yeah, I
was it
know.
Chain Echoes? It's like a reference to this game.
We've had this conversation multiple times, and I wish we like in a perfect world we would never have this conversation because people would not do this. But we keep having this conversation because fucking people, developers, keep on doing this, and it kind of is really annoying because it's like you're trying to make a game within the same genre, and you're supposedly like a love letter to it, yet your language is like insulting the genre itself, pretty much, right? It's like you claim you love the genre, but then you're like, oh, by the way, we're fixing it. It's like that's that's not how you in my opinion, that's not really how you would show reverence or love to that genre. You'd be like, like this is our own spin on things. Like or just let the game speak for itself. Like, here's some of the game mechanics that we're showing off. You don't have to say we're fixing the RPG genre, as part of that statement. You can just let the game mechanics speak for itself and see if people like it or not. You don't have to be obnoxious about the way that you present yourself. In my opinion, I like that. To me, that seems like the smart play. But I'm also not involved with the game's marketing either. But I will inherently have a lower opinion of your game, straight up, being honest. When you do that. So it's just like so you're already I'm already working. How do I express this? You're already at a lower point in the starting line, I guess, in a race. Like usually, I kind of put everyone at the same spot in a race in the starting line. If I were to compare games as a start, as a race, but now you have a lower, or you're further back in the pack, so to speak. When I'm starting you,
they've kind of like poisoned the well, where it's like, oh yeah, this is the game that called themselves the spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger. Let's see what they've got, and then you're automatically already under that
I
scrutiny.
think I was already burnt by that when Square did that with the Tokyo RPG Factory with I Am Setsuna. I'm like, are you sad yet? It's like, are you getting all that nostalgia? I'm like, oh my god, this game's trying too hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this game looks like it's a little bit further out, and maybe Adam is aware, like we've talked about with a lot of these titles, they kind of incubate in indie land Kickstarter. I'm not sure if this had any sort of crowdfunding behind it at all, and then it just has a formal announcement here at TGS. I don't think Xbox is publishing it, but obviously they've platformed it on their Xbox Showcase.
What is it, Humble Bundle Games or Humble Indie, whatever?
Humble Games.
Humble Games.
Right, gotcha. And yeah, could be interesting, could be promising, but yeah, always going to have kind of that way that it initially decided to present itself. No release date, no release window. Currently only announced for Xbox as a console and of course on PC. But yeah, we'll keep eyes on it and see how it ends up compared to the other contemporaries that we talked about. And there's a few more that are also in the works too, like Sacrifier did a similar thing, maybe not as overtly. But they echoed oh, we're inspired by Star Ocean and we've got Sakuraba, and things like that. It's commonplace, I guess, is my thesis here. The last one we have, and one more indie title here before we go into other news. This is from developer Munana, they just released Keylocker. We've talked about that over the podcast. They're also the developer behind Virgo versus the Zodiac. They've announced their next project. This is Clowned King. We just have an announcement teaser trailer for this, only a few seconds long, but it's a isometric turn-based tactical RPG. So kind of the grid-based Disgaea or FFT. I'm only using those as a description of the gameplay perspective based on the 30 seconds of trailer. And they have a couple screenshots, no release date or window yet, but basically an announcement of Munana's next project, which is pretty interesting. I've not played Keylocker, but I really kind of like their art style there. They kind of have their own theming going on where they don't have really any explicit genre that they're pulling from. They're kind of just being inventive with their own thing. And this is, I think, a cool project to keep our eye on for that studio.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what the mechanics are. Unfortunately, Keylocker didn't really hit for me because I think the frequency of time attacks was a little bit too obnoxious for me. Based on the demo that I played, I don't know. Fix that up for the full release. So, but it was really surprising to see oh, they're ready to announce their next project immediately after just releasing Keylocker. So and it has a cool aesthetic.
All right, now we're going to go into like major trailers from other games. This is probably the big one from the week. I know a lot of people on our site and even in our community channel have this one circled. Monster Hunter Wilds. We were kind of expecting to see this, and of course we got it. We got a new a new trailer for Monster Hunter Wilds from TGS. We got the release date of February 28th of next year. I believe that's the same date as Hawaii Pirates Yakuza. And then we also got details for a lot of monsters that are unique to this game, new to this game, including the new flagship monster Arkveld. Arkveld, we've got obviously it's showcased in the trailer. We've got a lot of screenshots and concept art for it. I don't know how it was described like within the chat when it was being shown, but me coming late to this, I'm like, that looks like a very scary Barioth with a dragon and a chain whip. That's kind of how I saw it, but it's very cool, very unique. And we also got some details for more hunters, NPCs in the story, at least at the prologue of the story, and a lot of different screenshots and details, including like a native species of feline called the Woodwoods, the Palicos, in that region of the Scarlet Forest. A couple monsters that are unique to each of the biomes in each region. Were there any other highlights that came out of the monster hunting showing out of TGS?
Yeah, there's a little bit more. Like they had an extended cut of the trailer that confirms that Jan Kutku is coming back, which is like kind of like one of the bird wyvern monsters that you fight on very early on. But a lot of the Monster Hunter fans really like Jan Kutku.
That's the
So
one
that
that
was
poisons the shit out of you, right? I believe.
that not it's not the one with the tongue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I take it back.
Yeah. It has like kind of the birdish, like it's kind of like a big ostrich bird almost. Um, and then during the TGS presentation for Monster Hunter Wilds, they showed off, some of the gameplay, like the open like region and how big it is, and like the real time weather and lighting changes, which look really nice. They faced off against like that big, huge aquatic monster. I forgot what it was called off the top of my head.
Oh, I was thinking of Jan
Duna.
Garuga. My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so they showed off like the fight with the Uthduna there, and that looked crazy because it was like around a river. But the big one for Monster Hunter fans was they also confirmed that Kongalala is coming back to Monster Hunter Wilds. And for people who don't know Kongalala, and it's the monster known as the fart monster in the series, because it's like a big tall gorilla, and its main gimmick is like just farting a lot and like causing like kind of like a big stink status ailment on you. So, and of course, yeah, the like the weak spot is like its butt as well. So that was a fun, disgusting thing to come back. It's like, yep, there's the fart monkey. It's back. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. It just looks it looks beautiful. I think people are getting a little bit worried about the requirements of this game and how it's going to run on consoles, because every showing of it on console has been kind of a mess performance wise. Like they haven't been able to stabilize performance in any of these its showings in on the consoles so far. Then on PC, like I think there was like a PC requirements that they released after the release date trailer, and like a lot of it was like, hey, if you want to, like, it seems to imply that like, hey, if you want to have stable high frame rates, this is we're releasing these requirements with the assumption that you have frame generation on or something, which is really only available on like the 4000 series, I believe, for Nvidia. Um, so I don't know. I don't know what to think. I really hope it doesn't launch in a really bad state performance wise. That's all I can really. That's the only sort of like commentary I can really give on it. It's like, man, I really hope when I fire this up on PC, it's not a fucking mess.
Yeah, and it's
performance
obviously
wise.
the first we've talked about. This is the first like truly worldwide crossplay, all consoles, PC. Well, not Switch, but maybe Switch 2 later. But no delayed PC port, and then expansion after that coming off for different consoles differently. It's just all aligned. So it'd be nice if it just releases, has the crossplay, works well. They've had their kind of experience with releasing World and Rise, but this is obviously a different engine. So hopefully all goes as planned,
Yeah,
because
I
it would
mean,
suck if it didn't.
it's the release date is a little bit later than I wanted it to be, but it's okay. Sorry. It's gonna be a good time, but I just hope that it does. I don't have to like. I really hope that it just launches in a stable state for all the platforms that it releases in. Really.
And I'll remind that James was recently able to go hands-on. I have not read his preview, but he has written it and put up on the site, I think, within the last day or two at the time of recording. So if you want to see some hands-on or read some hands-on impressions for Monster Hunter Wilds, James has those up on the site. We finally got a lot of updates for upcoming level 5 titles from their Vision 2024 to the World's Children event. We talked about in the past, obviously they announced a lot of titles all at once a little over a year ago. Some of them were originally slated to release last year. A lot of them were moved to this year. We were wondering the status of some of these, including like Inazuma 11 Victory Road, had its private like beta events for the Switch and then other consoles earlier this year. We kind of got a follow up on a lot of these. So in no particular order, Inazuma 11 Victory Road will be releasing worldwide in June simultaneously for all consoles, PS5, PS4, Switch, PC, and mobile devices. And then they released a new trailer for that, a pretty long trailer detailing a lot of the mechanics of the game. Of course, we kind of talked about this because I forget, Josh, did you play one of the technical stress test events for
Yeah,
for Inazuma
I
11?
played the betas. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
fun. I mean, like I didn't like go like too ham on them, but like it's a fun game to just kind of learn and explore and see like what this new entry of Inazuma 11's about. I've never really played an Inazuma 11 game, so it was fun like discovering like how do they adapt like RPG mechanics into like soccer, and that was a lot of fun. The fun new thing that they unveiled in this new trailer is like there's a new commander mode um, that you can use in all the gameplay modes. So it's like an alternative control scheme for the game, where instead of like directly controlling your players like in real time, like any other sports game or action game, really. This one like lets you all do it through like a menu in real time. So like, so it's kind of interesting to see like, oh, there's a way to like kind of operate everything through a menu, but things are still going on. It's not like turn based or anything. Like, yeah, things are still happening in real time. So I wonder. I'm interested. I kind of want to try it out and see like if this is like a more versatile way to like play the game. I don't know. It's I just thinking about the scope of this game is like overwhelming because they're like, oh, we bumped up the playable character or players in this game from 4,500 to 5,200 characters in this game. I'm like, yep, that's a big number. Fuck. So yeah.
And then this is one when I was going through the headlines to prepare for this podcast. This is one I also wasn't expecting. I assume alongside that, in the same presentation, Level 5 announced that they are going to be remaking the original Inazuma 11 for 2026, called
Yeah.
Inazuma 11 Re, RE, so remake for the 15th anniversary, coming out in the year after Victory Road, and they had a trailer for that as well.
Yeah, it's coming to PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC. So we still get PS4 releases in the year 2026. Still going strong. Um, and it's a remake project for the very first Inazuma 11 game that came out. I believe it was like DS. I think it came out or 3DS. Forgot. I think it's DS.
I think it's
Um,
DS, yeah.
yeah. Um, and yeah, I mean, a lot of people who were Inazuma 11, fans, just they fell in love with the series there. That kind of is the entry point of like this big mega hit like soccer RPG series, and um,
I think my
the,
friend was trying to get me into this game because Shaolin Soccer just came in theaters and we watched that. And then he's like, "You want something even more over the top? Try this." I'm like, that's okay." So that's kind of like my history with it.
yeah. And it was funny because like the way they framed the trailer, it's like, oh shit, there's no more stylus that we can use for this game. What are we gonna do? So they had to like kind of also overhaul the gameplay without having because you don't have a stylus anymore. We'll see that eventually, and it's gonna be released for worldwide. I don't know if it's simultaneous worldwide or anything, but level 5 is pushing towards that now. So all the best to them.
Another level 5 product that we were wondering, and I think we kind of all anticipated this, but DecaPolice, which has kind of had a long, maybe not long, but a slightly troubled development cycle based on its initial debut and kind of the lack of information following has been officially pushed into 2026. However, they've also announced that it is committing itself to a PC release, which I think was kind of all but confirmed before. It wasn't truly clear cut,
Yeah.
as well as a simultaneous anime adaptation for the IP.
Yeah, they'd like to do this, like with Megaton Musashi, that also got the same treatment where like the original release of Megaton Musashi got anime adaptation alongside them. So I mean, they like this cross media strategy. Obviously, the big bummer is like, hey, this cool new like detective RPG was like initially slated to release in 2024, now all the way pushed back to 2026. Obviously, because of James's reports, like when he got the demo, I think it was like, yeah, last year, um for DecaPolice, like we were already anticipating that it wasn't going to release in 2024 and possibly get pushed to this year, but now it's like, no, not even this year. It's going to get pushed down to not even next year. It's going to get pushed all the way back to the
Well,
year
it was
after.
actually the original trailer actually said 2023. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah, fuck. So
Mhm.
it's
I mean, games take time.
yeah,
I'm not judging from them for that. I think it was always
yeah,
a little bit like that's optimistic. It's probably gonna get delayed. But yeah, hopefully it's had time to bake. And I know people that have seen it hands off have been really, interested in the concept and the idea behind it. And it's always just good to see new ideas come to the forefront. So I think this is a kind of an interesting and intriguing title to keep our eye on for 2026.
yeah, yeah. So the new trailer is like basically the theme song trailer for the game, some new
Mhm.
footage. So we'll see it again when it's like hopefully near ready. It's take all the time you need to make the game as good as you can.
I have a question. Do they have any announcements for the Professor Layton thing, or is that
They
shown there?
do. Like obviously it's not within our scope, but they did show off Professor Layton, the new Layton game, like the new World of Steam, and they also have a demo for it at the Tokyo Game Show floor. That you can actually play it in English at the show floor. I think I forgot when that's releasing. I think it's sometime next year. I don't think it's
That's so
2026.
weird. I feel like the year before they're like, oh, it's like DecaPolice is more ready. Now this game's more ready. Like what?
Yeah, I forgot exactly what the release date for that one is, but yeah, I mean it's in the works. It seems to be like their biggest Layton game yet. Hopefully that all shakes out.
And then one other game that was we've kind of always discussed bundled with the other set from level 5, Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time, was also supposed to originally release uh, 2023. I was checking our old news posts and scrolling backwards to see. Announced around the same time, early 2023, originally supposed to release that year. Um, is going to release now with a planned date of April 2025, and got a new trailer alongside a release date announcement.
Yeah, is there like the last slated release date before the April 2025 was the October 10th, 2024. But now they officially confirmed the release window is April 2025. Still coming only to the Switch, and then the big unveiling here is like there's like a whole big open world area to the game that you can explore, and you can like switch like different like life jobs classes on the fly as well in the game. So it's all the best to them. Hopefully it works out. Can you say
2025/2026 will be the year of level 5.
that's right?
Another trailer here. This is a trailer for a game we've talked about once before, announced back in May. This is a first-person hack and slash called Voin. So basically, it's almost like high speed. What was that name? Mordhau, the first
More how?
person.
Yeah,
Mordhau, yeah, it was like that. It's like that in terms of its gameplay being purely first person melee combat, only with a very like fantasy grim dark aesthetic. And it's basically has a new trailer and has announced it'll be available with a demo for the next Steam Next Fest, which I don't know if we have dates for that, but it's slated for October.
I
So
think it's like
Voin,
October 14 to 21. I think those are the dates.
yeah, and they've talked about that what the demo will have available to players, but they just released a short new trailer for their game, which kind of has an interesting gameplay concept and will be playable within a few weeks alongside the Steam Next Fest. And we always try, especially Josh, you're good at really focusing on a lot of the interesting projects coming out of those demos. So not only do we have a lot of new games releasing in October, but we'll have a lot of uh, demos coming out as well for games further down the road. that I'm sure we'll want to try to keep an eye on as many of those as possible. A few kind of other incidental updates here. Some of these have some accompanying trailers and some don't. One of the early releases for next year in January is the recently announced Tales of Grace's remaster. Bandai Namco basically just talked about some of the things that are going to be present for the new remastered edition of this game. They talked about how you'll be able to access the grade shop right away. You'll be able to have a dash for the overworld and a toggle for no encounters. They've added subtitles for things that were previously weren't subtitles, like battle chants during like Mystic Arts or post-battle comments, which is pretty common for this era of Tales games. They've said that previous DLC will be included, except for cases where it was like licensed content. DLC skits will now be voiced in English. There was one little footnote that Cherio's VA won't be returning for the skits. Instead of Laura Bailey, it'll be Alexis Tipton. So immediately I saw several comparisons to the Tales of Vesperia remaster where they did some VA changeouts in the middle of the game. Luckily here, it seems like it's only limited to some DLC skits, so much less pervasive throughout the game.
It's not all the skits. It's only like
only the previous unvoiced DLC skits, which I don't know what those consist of, but yeah, just a handful of skits.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, grade shop. I'm trying to see. New destination on the map for the main story will now be highlighted by an exclamation point icon. Adjusted cursor movement speed. If you go to our news post on this or from Bandai Namco directly, they kind of detail in basically an ordered list all the updates for the remastered edition. A lot of it is stuff you've seen before. It's nothing too surprising here.
Mm-hmm.
So. We have an update for a game that we just first talked about back in May. This is kind of an interesting project from Tipwork Studio called Ballad of Antara. It is a free to play game that presented itself like a Souls-like. It originally debuted and was announced with a pretty long trailer that was a combination of like cinematics and some gameplay, and showcased a variety of characters. So there's nothing's been explicitly shown from the developer as I can tell, but because it showed multiple characters and multiple gameplay styles, that will likely tie into the free-to-play like monetization system, but none of that's been truly like laid out. And we have another trailer here that is basically 15 minutes of footage showcasing primarily gameplay with a few cinematics within the game, again showcasing multiple characters. Very, very much just kind of still shows that Souls-like, Elden Ring-like gameplay. Actually shows the UI elements which we always like to see, but still no real details on how the game is structured, other than the story mode is single player and will have cooperative elements. But how those are implemented, is it like a summon sort of system like the games, or is it separate from the main game? I'm not sure. But it's a decent look of a lot of gameplay from Ballad of Antara, slated for next year. We also got, this is also coming out of the State of Play. This is something that I think no one is surprised by, but Stellar Blade, which of course released earlier in this year for PlayStation 5, very much inspired by the likes of NieR Automata, will now have a crossover with NieR Automata. I think this is not a surprise for both the IPs in question. We got a trailer announcing the crossover. It just said soon, so I don't know if any other dev interview or blog has given any sort of release window for this. It'll also update photo mode. This update to Stellar Blade.
Yeah, I don't know if they gave it a date, but they've been patching that game to
There was a recent patch lately which they improved the juggle physics.
There's like graphical enhancements and physics enhancements like in a recent patch as well. So they continue to actually like add updates to that game. Like there's like a summer event that was previously a limited time summer event, but now I guess there's like a toggle for it. Like you can flip it on or off. So like you can have so I don't think they're gonna time gate that anymore, which was a good decision, because why would you have fucking
time gate on a single player
limited time FOMO content in a single player game that you can play offline? Seems So so it's a good thing they backtracked on that and just made that always accessible. Especially what about the players who are waiting for the PC version as well too? But it's a totally when they announced that they were going to collaborate with something, everyone knew what the fuck they were gonna collaborate with. There's only one clear answer to that, and of course it was pure Automata.
Look, Yoko Taro says if you pay him, you can collab anything. Okay,
Yeah, they'll do anything for money. So and they
I mean,
and,
yeah,
and they stay true to that.
they lean into that, and I think they
Yeah,
explicitly quoted this announcement and said, "We'll do anything for money." I'm almost a little tired of hearing that. Like, yes, they will.
yeah.
I
I
know
mean, yeah,
the novelty has kind of worn off, but it's like whatever, man. It's like I'll take it.
At this point, it's just like lean into it. We get it.
yeah. I mean, at least they're true to it, and they're being honest about it. Just
Yeah,
say
yeah.
it. Just say it. I kind of
I
wish
don't,
more people were like, yeah, we'll just do it. Well, if you give us money, we'll do it.
Yeah, he's like
yeah,
my favorite spokesperson. It's like everyone's like asking for like these, was it these very complex questions? And he's like, oh, I just like women or money or something like that. It's so simple. It's like why can't the world just be that way?
If only.
a couple years ago, or about a year and a half ago, we had the announcement of ArcheAge II from Kakao Games. Kakao Games? How do you pronounce that? KAKAO Games.
A
I think
cow.
it's I think it's cacao. Yeah.
Kakao Games. So that was the MMO that originally released in 2013. They announced an ArcheAge 2 back in 2022. ArcheAge's servers actually had a shutdown notice earlier this year from late June. So I'm not entirely sure about how that was received, but during the state of play, it did kind of resurface as an announced project for both consoles, PlayStation and Xbox and PC for next year. Only now under the name ArcheAge Chronicles. And this is not the first time we've seen this. We've kind of had similar things where like very MMO styled games, like the New World is having that either has or recently had that Aeternum update where it came to consoles and isn't calling itself an MMO. Crimson Desert isn't calling itself an MMO. ArcheAge Chronicles, in the press release for this new revision of what was previously ArcheAge 2, they said this new title represents our vision of combining the expansive, immersive elements of an MMO with the dynamic, engaging gameplay of an online action RPG. So they at least they're not shying away from saying yes, it has MMO elements into it, but I'm like an MMO can have action combat, like it can still be an MMO. That's me just
No, it's
reading that. Like,
impossible. It's
yeah, like
impossible. It can't be done.
yeah, like I know like WoW and FF14 and other games like tab targeting is kind of maybe what comes to mind, but there have been other games that have had action combat in an MMO. But yeah, the still slated to come out next year under the name ArcheAge Chronicles. It'll come out for PC and consoles at the same time, and we have the new trailer alongside that announcement. We have another update for Front Mission 3 remake. Of course, all the Front Mission remakes were kind of announced at the same time, all from Forever Entertainment, being developed by different studios. We've talked about the release of the first two Front Missions over the last couple of years, primarily, unfortunately, circled around some pretty bad and strange translation issues with those games. And we finally got I think this is our first real look at Front Mission 3, which before had kind of been like yes, we're working on it, but worry about it until the other two come out. Demo gameplay, about 25 minutes of gameplay for the upcoming Front Mission 3 remake.
Yeah, like the translation issues was primarily around Front Mission 2 because the first Front Mission remake they kind of got the script from the
DS
Original
version
game.
probably.
DS version.
Mm.
This is I don't know, man. I know there's like a
It doesn't
super
look
early
good.
build. I know there's super early build or not, but I'm not liking what I'm seeing for this Front Mission 3 remake.
Now all the characters got like that golden sun effect where everyone's like, when they're talking like that.
Yeah, so
Really,
like for example, like yeah, when dialogue is being spoken, every single character that appears on screen for each word that they're speaking into a dialogue text box has a sound effect that's really annoying. Because it's just like you just have like obnoxious sound effects as like anyone is speaking, and that'll get tired really really fast. I was already getting tired of it by like skimming through it, so not looking good for the full game on that. The game itself is like somewhat like the Wanzers feel very weightless during the footage. Like they don't feel heavy. They're kind of like look like toys roaming around the battlefield, and like the battle animations are very very basic and um don't really they don't really have like any sense of weight when they go through it. And just in general, just the aesthetics of it, it just kind of looks worse than the PS1 version, which is kind of amazing.
how can
Um,
you do such a thing
I
at
don't,
this era?
yeah, I don't understand. So I mean, Front Vision 3 is like a decent entry. Like
It's one of the better ones in
yeah,
my opinion.
it's a decent entry in Front Vision, but this remake is. I don't know if it's really doing it justice. Hopefully, it's just like a super, super, super early build, and it's totally not going to be what's going to be in the final version. But based on the track record of these remakes, even though they're from different development studios, this whole remake trilogy for Front Mission has kind of just been a big ass disappointment.
Only as Square would just do it themselves, but they're probably
Oh
always
no,
short-staffed
yeah,
at this point.
yeah, Square Enix short staffed that for sure. No, it's just like I just kind of wish they kind of showed it more love and care for this series, but I don't know. I don't know. It was just kind of a bummer just skimming through this gameplay and be like, yep, it looks like ass.
Now
Awesome.
remind me, they're all still on Switch, right? Switch
They're
is
all initially released on Switch, but the previous two remakes already came to other platforms. But all of them always released first on Switch,
gotcha.
and
So
then eventually they come to other platforms after.
okay, cool. Thanks for the reminder.
Hmm.
And we kind of already talked about this. Metaphor ReFantazio has a demo. Kind of got leaked by what was it? Sony Korea or
It's like Atlas Korea or something. It's
Atlas
like
Korea? That's what it was.
yeah,
But yeah, so yeah. Now available demo for Metaphor coming out mid October.
yeah. It has the same data transfer. It's actually a beefy demo.
Yeah,
Like you could get like 5 to 6 hours out of it, or
that's what
even
I had
more for
heard
like
too. Yeah.
grinding. Yeah,
Mhm.
so for people who are just interested, like seeing, oh, what do they have in store, like it's
Mhm.
give it a try for yourself. It seems to be like a really interesting idea that they have in store.
Yeah, I know the demo has not been received well on PC because of some performance issues, but I know Atlas has released a statement basically saying that they're working on it.
Yeah, hopefully that's comes out sooner rather than later because it never really feels good that like a lot of your first impressions of the game is like, man, this runs like ass.
Mhm.
That's never the first impressions you want to hear.
Mhm. We have one sales update. We have that Unicorn Overlord, of course, the Vanillaware project that released in March this year, has hit 1 million units sold, which kind of puts it kind of on par with Vanillaware's other successful titles like 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, also hit the 1 million sales mark late last year. Unicorn Overlord's available on more platforms, so you can dive into the technicalities if you want. But of course, good success for the game. They released some new artwork celebrating the milestone, and kind of a game that I played through and enjoyed quite a bit. And will be interesting to see kind of what its lasting impressions are compared to the
Yeah,
rest of that of Vanillaware's
yeah.
like
The
filmography.
Congratulations, Vanilla Bear gets to continue existing. They
Mm-hmm.
they they,
If
they,
only
they
they, if only they use some of that budget to make a PC version.
it feels like they live precariously and they live dangerously.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
awesome.
the
Good on them.
development history is crazy. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna take my entire life savings to make this game. It's like, what?
Yeah,
I
if any of our games underperform, we're doomed. But luckily, we always pull through.
fucking Vanilla Bear, dude. So, hopefully within the next decade, we'll see what they're working on next, and hopefully within the next decade, they'll start putting some of their previous titles and current titles on more platforms like PC and PC and PC.
Mm-hmm.
So, but but what do I know? Clearly, I don't like making money. So,
You're allergic to money.
yeah,
I guess I could have talked about this next headline with the same at the same time as the well, I guess it's not really a demo. At Xbox's TGS stream, a lot of the Final Fantasy titles that had previously skipped Xbox are now available on Xbox Series digitally as well as part of Game Pass. So Trials of Mana, Legends of Mana, and the Pixel remaster for the Final Fantasy series are all available on Xbox Series, with the Trials of Mana and Legend of Mana available to Windows Game Pass subscribers. So kind of one of those things where we had obviously the announcement from Square Enix about entering their new kind of marketing phase over between 2024 and 2026, kind of having a more global approach to the release cadence. We've talked about many times about how the schizophrenia of what they've released randomly hodgepodge across platforms and exclusivity and things like that. We've already seen some of the things come to light in terms of wanting to put more things on more platforms, and now we get into some of the Xbox holdouts from their series released on the Xbox Series.
I'll move it up here because it's relevant. But like we just recently, it's like we still see some of that from Square Enix with Triangle Strategy launching off for MetaQuest on October 31st.
Yeah, I forgot I put that down there. Yeah, Triangle
Yeah.
Strategy is Adam had to remind me that this had released obviously on as a Switch exclusive and later came to PC. It's still not on Xbox, but it is on MetaQuest coming out, or will be on MetaQuest on October 31st. I'm not sure that an isometric strategy RPG is the best fit for a VR game, but maybe I'll ask someone who's a little bit more into the VR space about.
Yeah, I mean the trailer for it is like, oh, it's kind of cool because it's kind of like a diorama, like almost like controlling a diorama with your hands and stuff. But like the concept is cool. I don't know if I'd replay Triangle Strategy if I had a VR headset around for it. But like it's a cool concept, but it's like you would think that like this title would probably do better if like it was on Xbox and PlayStation first before MetaQuest. It's like, and I'd have to think that like the resources poured into the MetaQuest release of this game is probably more than it would be on Xbox and PlayStation. I would think, but what I know,
Yes.
it's just like I don't know. You still get some of this weird shit from Square Enix, man. I just don't understand.
I don't know. It's always a questionable decision with this company every year.
Like you just get the occasional Square Enix of like they're doing what?
Imagine if they did something like that. It's like Final Fantasy VII Part 3 on VR. And you're like,
MetaQuest
what?
exclusive. It's like, yeah.
It's one of those things where, like, sure, like, I'm not a huge VR aficionado. I like to see it supported. I know a lot of people that do report really good, experiences that can only be experienced that way. But then you kind of say, like, well, you just talked about these other games releasing on Xbox. Triangle Strategy is still a holdout, and I'm sure it'll come eventually. But I can't say that with confidence. I wouldn't put money on it.
I don't know. This seems kind of random. Is there a game that you're interested to see from Square Enix on VR?
Wait, what?
I said, is there a game that you're interested from Square Enix that you want to see on VR?
The FF7 remakes, the remake and rebirth, like just do it all first person.
Mm-hmm.
You are now Cloud or Barrett.
Oh
or
damn!
Tifa.
I gotta get to the date scene immediately.
Dude,
There you
playing as like any of those characters, like especially Barrett or Tifa in VR first person, would be fucking sick.
Imagine doing the Yuffie thing, flying around.
Yeah, let me
I
fly.
get motion
Yeah,
sickness.
yeah. Let me just hurl immediately as playing as Yuffie in VR. Awesome. Thank
And
you,
also,
Square Enix.
one thing that I might need to pick the brain on for someone who's a little bit more active in the VR space is I don't envy people or like publishers, developers having to come up with like non-VR trailers to market their VR game. Like I was watching this Triangle Strategy VR trailer and they're like, look, you can like turn your head to watch animations on the side of the screen. And it's just like, cool, I guess. Or you could just center it on the screen, like us 2D plebs. It's interesting, but it'll be cool to see kind of the response to this. Though it does seem like a strange decision.
It'll be cool to see the response if we hear any response. That's the thing. Like
That's true. Yeah.
I don't know, but outside of James, I don't really know any VR players. So I'll be honest.
I think Scott did a few, but yeah, James on the podcast.
Can ask my brother to borrow his MetaQuest, I guess.
There we go. Chow on the scene.
All right. Chow, VR expert. To be. All right, a few more days to go through here. Cryptmaster will be getting a console release on October 3rd for Xbox One and Series and PlayStation 4 and 5. Released on PC back in May. I believe James reviewed it. He previewed it. He didn't review it, but he did talk about his time with that game. Here's kind of an interesting one. Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered will be launching on October 31st for PlayStation 5 and PC. Obviously, the original game came out in 2017. There's already been a lot of discussion kind of in the online spaces about whether a remaster for Horizon Zero Dawn makes sense or is warranted. There's been a few comparisons made about whether it actually looks better or just different. I think that the one interesting thing here is that, yes, it'll launch on PC. So the complete edition for Horizon Zero Dawn released on PC in 2020. The remastered edition will launch this year, but will require a PlayStation account to play, where the original version doesn't. So that's weird to me. Is that it'll
Yeah,
be two versions of the game if they don't shut down or stop selling the complete version, where it's a single player game. There's a version on PC that already looks very nice that doesn't require an additional login, but the remastered edition will, and just seems like why.
apparently, like they like doubled the price on of the original version after the remastered version was announced too.
Because
Really?
you could buy the original for a very cheap upgrade. So it's like $10, was it, if you had owned the game before? And it's like, oh, it's
Yeah,
$10.
if you own
So
the game, you can get a $10 upgrade to the
so they just
remastered.
stealthily like raised the MSRP of the original after the remastered was announced because of that.
I played the original. I thought the graphics are already insane enough. It's like I feel like this is like the most pointless remaster in existence. And I actually even think that the original looks better in certain parts, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, 'cause, like the remastered version, like they touted has like 10 hours of recorded dialogue or re-recorded dialogue and like improved animation on the models and lighting, textures, and sounds, and then it'll support like frame gen technologies like the DLSS and FSR, um, and all those sorts of stuff. Brian, you've played these games fully. Does this remastered thing speak to you at all as someone who's already played through them?
The thing is that Horizon Zero Dawn, I won't say famously, but obviously one big difference here is that the remastered version is being developed by Nixxes, Nixxes, which was acquired by Sony last couple of years, where the original version was Virtuos, I believe. Um, and when I played Horizon Zero Dawn on PC, I had no issues with it. Like it ran decently well for me, and I could get 4K resolution, 60 frames. But then as soon as it released, it had a lot of people reporting problems. And I remember Durante actually put a blog post said, "Here are the settings you should set to get the best performance of Horizon Zero Dawn on PC." And they're all the settings that I had already been doing. Like, oh, of course I had no issues. I was just lucked into kind of having the the appropriate setup, I suppose. Plus, I probably had a PC that was just brute forcing it in a lot of cases. So I guess to try to be a little bit more positive on a remaster, Nixxes maybe has got a little bit more experience under their belt and will hopefully release the PC version in a better state. But then with a trade-off of at the cost of requiring a PlayStation account in order to play it, like that's always kind of the other shoe.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
mean that.
Have you seen
That's
that
just
Ragnarok on, or that was it the God of War Ragnarok that has that same thing, and somebody put a mod to get rid of the PlayStation login, but it got removed immediately or something
Uh,
like that.
well. I mean, so the thing about that is like the person who put it up like voluntarily decided to take it off after like a few hours or a day or whatever because they don't want to get in trouble by Sony.
Yeah.
So by already releasing it, like people are able to spread it like within their own circles, under the hood, so to speak.
yeah.
So
Like, but I refuse to buy this game if I had to do a PlayStation login. Even though I have a PlayStation, I'll just get on the PlayStation.
I
I'm
mean
not
that's
gonna
just,
do.
that's just the whole that's the whole initiative. Like Sony budged on Helldivers 2, but that's like the only one time they'll do it because that game did not launch initially with that requirement. While all of these are from the get go, and they're being explicit and transparent upfront that you will need to have a login to play them. So it's not like a Helldivers 2 situation where like it was more stealthily executed. So like that's why they budged on it because like they didn't convey well enough that you needed one eventually. While this one, they're very, 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 very obvious and explicit on their pages that you do need it uh, to play the game, which is that's not that's something that like I don't like, but that's all, but also something that like I'm not gonna like strike them down for in terms of like they're making it they're conveying it very obviously up front. So if you're getting it and you don't like that, you're still buying the product and then complaining about something that they already conveyed to you up front very obviously. Unlike with Helldivers 2, a lot of people didn't know that eventually you would need a login to have access and play that game, and that's why they walked it back because that was something that not a lot of people saw, and
Yeah,
because
that that
and they disabled temporarily because the servers were being overloaded. That's
yeah,
a very different situation than
Yeah,
what
that's kind of the
happened with
caveat. Like
Ragnarok.
if Sony said,
Ragnarok.
"Hey, we're releasing this new title. It's coming to PC either at the same time or later," and we want you to sign into it. Like, sure, it's annoying, but I get it. But then like Helldivers, you didn't have it required. Horizon for Zero Dawn, there's a version of PC that doesn't require it. I just looked it up because I hadn't gotten to it yet. Horizon Forbidden West released on PC this March, like 6 months ago, and doesn't require it. And it just seems that's I think what's causing
Yeah.
the irrationality, not irrationality, just irritation, is that it just doesn't seem consistent. It's like, why this, not this? Why this later, but this now?
It's one of those
Single
things
player
because
games,
Sony shifted their strategy to like said because thanks to like primarily driven by Helldivers 2, they know that they have a substantial opportunity on the PC market to for people to buy their games and get in that Sony ecosystem. So because they want their metrics, they're making the PSN login mandatory because they want people in that ecosystem to drive up their numbers for their metrics and their hope, and they've stated themselves in their fiscal report, their hope is like to convert those people who bought it on a PC for them to get like the sequels on PlayStation. Like, man, I really want like the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, like for Ghost of Yote, I really like Tsushima on PC, so maybe I'll get a PS5 to go play Yote when it releases. That's like their ideal strategy. Like Tsushima, when it came out on PC, that's kind of like one of the earliest releases this year, that mandated that PSN login
yeah, it does, yeah.
as well. So that's their business strategy. Whether it's a smart one or not, I don't really think it's a great strategy, but in that line of thinking, but that is what their strategy is. That's why they will not budge for that PSN login requirement anymore, because it was a very much a one-time miraculous stars aligned situation for them to double back on the Helldivers 2. But that's not to say that they're permanently gonna like disable it for the Helldivers 2. I'm sure they're working around the clock to be like, okay, how can we get Helldivers 2 players into the ecosystem without getting so much backlash like last time? It's a complex situation, but I mean, at this point, people who are complaining are just like, it'll die down eventually. It's like how every other fucking backlash for other logins, like the EA login, for the Ubisoft login, eventually died down over time on Steam to sign on to those services. They're still annoying as fuck, but people don't really cause a stir about them anymore because it's been so long.
It's the internet. People forget about things
it's a
after
vocal
you're.
minority, yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it is.
Let's have a few more dates to wrap up through here. Fantasian Neo Dimension, of course, this is the console release and PC release for Fantasian that was announced back in the summer. We'll be releasing on December 5th, and it looks like James did just put up a hands-on preview for Fantasian Neo Dimension, specifically on Steam Deck. Of course, originally a mobile game. Kind of no surprise that it seems like it's at home on Steam Deck, only with the new voiceover and things like that for that version of the game. But yeah, if you haven't played Fantasian because you didn't want to, get into Apple Arcade's ecosystem or play on mobile, it'll be coming out at the end of the year for consoles and PC. Going into next year, some early Q1 release dates. Wizardry, The Five Ordeals, which released on PC a couple years back, will be releasing on Nintendo Switch on January 25th. Phantom Brave, The Lost Hero, of course, was announced, I believe, I think it was a Nintendo Direct in June, is going to be releasing for all consoles on January 30th. And the PC version will also launch in 2025, but later. So January 30th for consoles, PlayStation and Switch, and then PC in 2025 at some later date. The Utararo Ramono trilogy, this is Prelude to the Fallen, Mask of Deception, and Mask of Truth, will all release on Nintendo Switch in Japan next year. No announcement yet of a Western port, but seemingly likely if they're going to be bringing them over to Switch, that we'll eventually see them in English, but nothing confirmed at this point. Here's probably the most interesting one out of the list near the end here, and kind of ties into the previous discussion a little bit. Assassin's Creed Shadows was originally slated to release on November 15th. It has been postponed, and Ubisoft will release Assassin's Creed Shadows on February 14th of next year. In addition, it will be launching on Steam as well as the Ubisoft and Epic Games Store at launch. So it'll be available on all those PC platforms on February 14th next year.
Yeah, and then according to them, like the stated reason on their Twitter post was to polish and refine the experience, pushing further some of our key features. Some of the and also like one of the big change ups to this is along with this delay announcement, they canceled all previous pre-orders because all new pre-orders henceforth that delay um will have all the pre-orders new pre-orders will have the first expansion uh given to them for free to all the people who pre-ordered. Unlike gating that off the season pass model that they previously have done for their previous releases. So they're shifting to a new model where they're kind of getting rid of that season pass model and like kind of being more, I guess, they want to allow players to like keep on playing the game um well after its release, and the step for this for Assassin's Creed Shadows is making that first expansion for free, so more people are incentivized to come back to it because they've got that content for free and so forth.
I mean, in a
So
vacuum, I kind of like that. It's maybe not my preference, but I'd rather say, hey, for those that pre-order, instead of getting a free costume, you get the first chunk from the season pass, rather than having to pay for the season pass up front in like some $120 mega edition. Though I'm sure that's still an option. Of course, there'll be future DLC that they're hoping to get you into. Like, hey, we'll give you the first one, but then if you want the other two, you got to get the season pass. So
they
it's calculated in that way, but I still do appreciate it on its face.
yeah, so hopefully the game, like there was more to this report because Ubisoft released a statement and there are some memos that were leaked and also like based on their like financial report and so forth. But the basic summary is like Star Wars Outlaws didn't sell as well as they hoped. They call it was a um softer than they expected its sales performance. And they're hoping that to get more people back into the game or get new players into the game via bug fixes, fixing checkpoints, fixing the AI in the game, like the behavior of NPCs, and having sales discounts like around Black Friday and so forth. Because apparently that game didn't really miss the mark. Let's just say of
Well,
what
and
they were
also
hoping it
getting
to
like the
get.
Star Wars license extremely expensive. If your game doesn't perform, you're basically screwed.
Yeah. And also, like, I don't think that'll really drive sales for that game. But what do I know? I mean, Ubisoft has already been facing like they've been struggling for a long while
Yeah,
for
I think
various
they're really
reasons.
banking on this game. If this game does not perform, they're basically gone.
Yeah, and they are, it's kind of weird that they like based on the memos and the financial report that like they were already planning to ship Assassin's Creed Shadows, knowing that this game had like like had performance issues and bugs, like for that November launch. But now they're like, okay, we really want to take the time to really polish that out. So it's like it was already a previously calculated move for them to ship this in a maybe subpar state performance wise and fixing it up later. And maybe that's maybe kind of their strategy before, and hopefully moving forward, that's not the strategy. It should never be a fucking key pillar to be like, we're gonna release this game in maybe a not great state, and then we'll fix it later. Maybe that's not a great philosophy.
That's a terrible
Let's say,
mindset.
let's just say that's not a great philosophy. Yeah. So we'll see how it does. I mean, February is a pretty crowded uh it's a crowded crowded month for releases. So I don't know. Best of luck, but there's a lot of factors working against Assassin's Creed Shadows. Um, and a good portion of that is because Ubisoft has been losing a lot of goodwill, and I think a lot of people have just been kind of getting tired of Ubisoft's antics. Let's just say throughout the past few years, and it's really, really, really biting them in the ass now. Um,
So
but
I was looking at other Ubisoft games because obviously there's also that footnote about it coming to Steam right away. Clearly, their experiment to try to get people into the Ubisoft launcher or get the kickback from Epic and then come back to Steam has just not worked. So they're getting it on Steam at the outset. Like Skull and Bones was another one that released on Steam kind of late. I had to remind myself that game released at all.
Yeah.
And this is not indicative of anything, but just the Skull and Bones has got a mixed review on Steam. But I found apparently during the process of coming over to Steam, it changed its app ID. So there's one, right, you can still access the old discussions, but it's called Skull and Bones old do not use. It's just like, okay,
Nice.
like
Awesome.
that's just literally what the title of the game on the Steam app is called now. You can only get to it if you search for it, but that is kind of
That's
fun.
cool.
But yeah, just that long projects like Skull and Bones, like Beyond Good and Evil 2, which I suppose they're still working on, I guess. And then like there's small projects like that Prince of Persia game that was critically well received, just still didn't set the world on fire. So Ubisoft's kind of in, I won't say dire straits, but just kind of in a tough place where they're big games like Avatar and of course, like we said, Star Wars haven't set the world on fire. They're smaller games that they've kind of returned to with that Prince of Persia title have done well, but still aren't hitting their bottom line. So they're
I don't
banking
know.
a lot on
I
this
don't know if
next
I call
title.
I don't know if I call it done well for even that Prince of Persia game because it was received critically well, but that doesn't
I guess
say
that's what I
anything.
meant. Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess that's what I meant. Critically well, not necessarily commercially well.
that was also a late release on Steam, and it's like this probably would have done way better if like they'd released simultaneously on Steam. You know, um, that game is unfortunate because that game like the Lost Crown is like legitimately fantastic, but it's mired by like a lot of people just losing a lot of goodwill from Ubisoft and also not launching on Steam simultaneously. So Steam is a substantial market. Um, it's hard, it's difficult to ignore the Steam player base. Um, just unfortunate, all around for that game. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, Assassin's Creed Shadows is a great game and launches in a good state. That's all you can really hope for. But Ubisoft has just fucking fumbled the bag so many fucking times because of their business practices. Can you really say?
And then one last 2025 release window that we have, Momodora Moonlit Farewell, released on PC earlier this year in January. It will be releasing on PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch in early 2025. We just had a short little tiny announcement from Playism about the console version for next year. But yeah, that was a lot of news coming out of the State of Play, coming out of TGS, coming out of the Level 5 event. And of course, we're getting into a very busy time of year for releases. So we're able to talk about Zelda this week. Let me look at my release calendar. Next week, we'll have... next week, we do have Starfield Shattered Space, that expansion coming out in a couple days at time of recording. Maybe I'll try to get around to that. Early October, we've got the Diablo 4 expansion. Of course, Metaphor, October 11th, Romancing Saga, followed by Ys, followed by Dragon Age. Bang, bang,
Yeah.
bang in October. And then November, a little bit quieter, but Mario and Luigi, followed by Dragon Quest 3. And then early next year, the other Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD remake. And then February, like Assassin's Creed got moved to February to kind of for polish, but now February all of a sudden is crowded with games like Avowed and Kingdom Come pushed into there, and now we've got Monster Hunter and Like a Dragon just announced to come out in February as well. So
Yeah.
next year is immediately getting pretty packed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thank you, Josh. Thank you, Chow, and of course they're not here, but also Adam and James for holding up the fort of the podcast while I was out. And of course, hopefully we'll hear back from James. I believe he's slated to be back next week. I'm not sure. I think Adam is out until the week after next, but we'll record with whoever is available to be present for next week's episode of the podcast. If you've listened to this podcast and like it on whatever podcast service of choice, give us a rating, give us a comment, give us a review if you'd like. We do like to read those. Join our Discord, discord.gg/RPG site to join the conversation if you're excited about any of these upcoming games. You can follow RPG Site on any of the social media networks. Just search for RPG Space Site, SITE, and you should be able to find us. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. So until you hear from us next time, stay safe, take care. We'll talk to y'all later.
All right, peace out, everyone. Stay safe.